Chapter 1967. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Yu Linfeng all looked at Nan Gongwu. They nodded and smiled. That's right. Seeing this, Nan Gongwu was stunned for a moment. Then, she laughed out loud. Ha-ha, I knew that my idea was good. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang's nervousness and worry quickly dissipated. Previously, she had not been able to think of a good solution, so she was very worried. Her parents had suffered too much these few years. She also hoped that she could save them as soon as possible. After all, one less day of pain and suffering was extremely good. She believed that these few years, every day felt like a year to her parents. She did not know what kind of faith her parents relied on to persevere until now. As their daughter, she only wanted to save her parents as soon as possible and reunite with them. Until now, she did not know what her parents looked like. When they had separated, she was still too young. Thus, she did not have any impression of them. Fortunately, this day was not far away from them. Since we have decided to use explosives, Hongzhuang, from today onwards, you will develop explosives with me. Nan Gongwu's face was filled with excitement. She had wanted to develop explosives with Hongzhuang before. However, after Hongzhuang came to Limitless Palace, she put all her energy into cultivation. She did not want to disturb her. Now, she didn't think that her method would be used in such a way. The Yu clan was not an ordinary clan. If they wanted to have a certain influence in the Yu clan, it would not be an easy task. At the very least, the grade of explosives they needed to use must not be low. If their influence was small, then it would not have any influence on the Yu clan. Hongzhuang and the others' rescue plan would not succeed. Hearing Nan Gongwu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. No problem. From today onwards, I will develop explosives with Master's wife. She didn't have any understanding of explosives, and she couldn't guarantee that she had some talent in this area. However, no matter what, she had to give it a try. Since Ma was so interested in this, he believed that Ma knew a lot about explosives. She was only helping her master's wife. It would be best if she could achieve better results. Madam Yu, if you don't mind, why don't I research it together with you? At a time like this, every extra bit of strength was extremely important. After all, time waits for no man. If it could be of some help, that would be great. Nan Gongwu smiled and nodded. That would be for the best. Usually, she was the only one doing the research. Now, in addition to Bailey Hongzhuang, there was also Di Beichen, which made the research even better. She had been studying explosives for a long time, so she knew a lot about them. However, developing explosives also required a certain amount of talent. She always felt that the explosives she developed were lacking something. She had heard that Hongzhuang was very accomplished in many areas. Maybe Hongzhuang also had a very good talent in this area. Many times, developing explosives also required a certain amount of imagination. If there was someone to communicate with, she believed that it would be better. Chapter 1968. Nan Gongwu had always had a special fondness for developing explosives. However, there weren't many people in the Shangxian continent who could develop explosives. After all, the majority of cultivators focused their energy on cultivation. Explosives were only a supplementary item. It wasn't that Yu Linfeng didn't want to accompany Nan Gongwu in developing explosives. However, he didn't have any talent in this area. Thus, even though he usually listened to Nan Gongwu's complaints and dissatisfaction, he couldn't do anything about it. Now that they had reached this step, the county magistrate was stunned. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's focus was on developing explosives. As a result, Nan Gongwu wouldn't complain about him anymore. All in all, everything was developing in a good direction. As long as they could save Bailey Hongzhuang's parents, many problems could be solved one by one. The three beasties were also filled with enthusiasm. Although they could only watch from the side when their master was refining pills or drawing inscriptions, they shouldn't be too complicated. However, the explosives shouldn't be too complicated. Perhaps they would be able to do something. Since we've already decided, let's go now. Nan Gongwu's eyes were filled with excitement. Since they had already decided on their next course of action, they didn't need to stay here any longer. The earlier they started, the earlier they could start the rescue. Following Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun looked at each other and nodded. Right now, the most important thing for them was to save Lan Yunxiao and Nangong Wu. Nothing else mattered. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun followed behind Nangong Wu and headed towards Nangong Wu's palace. Behind Nangong Wu's palace, there was a place where Nangong Wu specialized in developing explosives. Usually, other than Nangong Wu, no one else would go there. Yulinfeng did not go with Nangong Wu and the others. He had to order someone to find someone who could make explosives. Furthermore, this information had to be kept secret. After all, the slightest movement between the major forces would be noticed by others. At that time, the matter of the Yu clan being suddenly attacked would definitely be known by many people. If other people knew that he was looking for the person who developed the explosives, they would easily associate it with him. Actually, he was not afraid of the Yu clan. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang's master, he naturally had to think for Bailey Hongzhuang. Now is not the time to expose himself. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the room where Nangong Wu was developing the explosives, her eyes couldn't help but be filled with amazement. This was truly a well-equipped workshop. Although she didn't know much about explosives, she could tell from the layout of this place and the things that filled it. After seeing this scene, Di Beichin also felt that Nangong Wu was unusually fond of this aspect. With such a complete set of equipment, it could be seen that Nangong Wu had spent a lot of effort in this area. Mistress, you have so many things here. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. No matter if it was refining pills or drawing inscriptions, there were many things that were needed. However, her arrangement was not as complete as Mistress's. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichin's amazed expressions, Nangong Wu felt a burst of happiness in her heart. Chapter 1969. Of course, Nangong Wu's interest was instantly piqued. I always feel that my cultivation speed is too slow. If I have this explosive, I can throw it at whoever I'm unhappy with. Wouldn't that be much more convenient? Listening to Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood why Nangong Wu liked explosives so much. It turned out that this was the root cause. After being together for such a long time, she had a certain understanding of her master's wife's character. Master's wife's character could be described with 4 words: simple and crude. If you can make a move, don't talk. Therefore, every time Master's wife appeared, she would be in a hurry. However, Master's wife's simplicity and purity was something that many people couldn't achieve. It's indeed a lot more convenient. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Just like what Nangong Wu said, if the explosive was strong enough and didn't require the use of elemental energy, it would be an excellent method to achieve a strong effect as long as it was thrown out. It was a pity that after the explosive's power reached a certain level, it couldn't be improved anymore. Therefore, most people still put their energy into improving their own cultivation. It wasn't a long-term solution. Even if they spent more time researching, they wouldn't be able to achieve good results. I always feel that the explosive's power can also be improved continuously. Just like how our alchemy skills can also be improved continuously, there are many grades of elixirs. Explosives should also be divided into many grades. Nangong Wu said her opinion. Many people told her that studying explosives was useless. When a cultivator's strength reached a certain level, explosives wouldn't be able to affect them at all. Nangong Wu didn't think so. She just felt that there might be other methods that they hadn't discovered yet. Listening to Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't comment. No one could say that Nangong Wu's idea was wrong, because there were many things in this world that others didn't know. Not knowing now didn't mean that it was wrong. However, it was not an easy task to research all of this. Perhaps he would be lucky enough to succeed, or perhaps he would never be able to figure it out in his lifetime. These were all possibilities. Hongzhuang, you and Beichun don't know much about explosives, right? Nangong Wu asked. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun nodded in unison. Indeed, they did not know about this before. Seeing this, Nangong Wu was not surprised. She immediately took some books from a workshop and passed them to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Take a look at the contents of the book first. The general idea is written in the book. When you have a general understanding of the situation, we will study it together. In the next 2 days, I will make some explosives on my own. I hope they can be of help, Nangong Wu said slowly. She hoped that someone would have the same hobby as her. However, rescuing Hong Zhuang's parents was such an important matter that it wasn't a joke. If Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun didn't have any knowledge in this area, then she would have to rely on her to develop some powerful explosives. At least she could guarantee that these explosives would cause a stir in the Yu clan. Chapter 1970. Taking the book that Nangong Wu handed over, Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded slightly. Mistress, I will memorize the contents of this book as soon as possible. Good luck. Nangong Wu's face was filled with a faint smile. She was full of expectations for Bailey Hong Zhuang. She always felt that Bailey Hong Zhuang had outstanding achievements in so many aspects. She might be the same in this aspect. After all, talent was extremely important. Yu Linfeng was also an extremely intelligent person. However, he did not have any achievements in explosives. This did not mean that he was not good enough. Next, Bailey Hong Zhuang saw that Nangong Wu was concentrating on studying explosives. The serious Nangong Wu was completely different from her usual self. It was as if at this moment, her eyes were only focused on the raw materials for making explosives. Looking at Nangong Wu like this, Bailey Hong Zhuang already understood her focus on explosives. If she did not like it very much, she would never show such a focused and addicted look. It was just like when she was studying medicine. She had put all her attention on it, and nothing could affect her. After seeing Nangong Wu's focused and serious look, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. In the end, they decided to go back first and not disturb Nangong Wu. After all, they could not do anything to help now. Even if they stood by the side, they would not be of any use. After Bailey Hong Zhuang returned to her bedchamber, she began to read the contents related to explosives seriously. There were not many books. As long as she calmed down and read, it would not take too long to finish reading. Xiao He and Xiao Bai sat on Bailey Hong Zhuang's shoulder and read seriously with Bailey Hong Zhuang. They were also somewhat interested in explosives. Baisher sat next to Di Beichun to study together. He also hoped that he could help. At night, Di Beichun finally decided to return to Tiangang sect by himself. He needed to tell his master about this plan, so that his master could help them make a better judgment. After all, Mu Lingbing was his master's daughter. His master would definitely care about her. In this regard, Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded in agreement. She also felt that it was better for Di Beichun to explain this matter properly. Perhaps his grandfather would have a better idea. Or perhaps his grandfather would directly come to Limitless Palace. Right now, she had to research explosives with her master's wife, so she couldn't leave. After Di Beichun left, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the three beasts focused on reading about explosives. She needed to engrave all of this in her heart before she could think of a solution with her mistress. She could conclude that Shermu had been researching explosives for so long and wanted someone to communicate with her. She must have encountered a bottleneck. If that wasn't the case, Master's wife wouldn't be so anxious. Bottlenecks, whether in cultivation or other aspects, were an extremely torturous existence. If one could not break through the bottleneck, then they would be stagnant. In the next 3 days, Bailey Hong Zhuang focused all her energy on reading. The three beasts knew how important this matter was. Hence, they did not disturb Bailey Hong Zhuang. Instead, they tried their best to engrave all of this in their hearts. Nangong Wu also knew that Bailey Hong Zhuang must be reading, so she did not look for Bailey Hong Zhuang. Chapter 1971. Yu Linfeng felt a little helpless as he looked at Nangong Wu's serious and persistent look. Nangong Wu was usually very interested in developing explosives, and now she had even more reason to continue her research. Although he was a little worried about Nangong Wu, he did not stop her. After all, this matter was very important. With Yu Xiqing's status in the Yu family, ordinary explosives would not be able to attract her. But to create an explosive that even Yu Xiqing had to pay attention to, that wasn't a simple matter. Perhaps they would have to put in more effort in this aspect. After 3 days, Bailey Hongzhuang finally finished reading all the books. Originally, she did not know anything about developing explosives, but after reading so many books, she understood quite a lot. At least, she now understood how to create ordinary explosives. However, if she wanted to make a powerful explosive, she still needed to know more about it. Should I go and learn from Mistress now? Bailey Hongzhuang thought and said. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasties could not help but look at each other and said, Master, you haven't rested for 3 days and 3 nights. You should take a rest first. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang working so hard, the three beasties felt their hearts ache. They understood that their master wanted to save her parents, but they could not be too anxious in this situation. If their master did not take good care of herself, and something happened to her, it would be worse. Before Di Baichen left, he had specially instructed them to take good care of their master. With Di Baichen's understanding of their master, he had already predicted that Bailey Hongzhuang would work hard day and night. I'm in a good condition now. There's no problem. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She had waited for so long and finally heard news about her parents. She only wished that she could end her parents' pain as soon as possible. Master, you don't seem to be in good spirits, Xiao He said with a frown. Xiao Bai quickly followed up, Master, if you're not in the right state of mind and something dangerous happens during the process of developing the explosives, that would be terrible. In my opinion, it would be better for you to rest for a while and go there full of energy. The palace mistress will be happier to see you. Master, you should rest for a while, White Lion said. Listening to the advice of the three beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment. She only felt that the words of the three beasts had some truth to them. She didn't really care about herself, but presumably Mistress was also working hard for her. If she went there in high spirits, Mistress would be even happier. On the other hand, if his mental state was not good, it would affect his master's wife. That would be bad. I'll rest for a while. You guys should rest too. You must be tired after these 3 days. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle. In the 3 days that she had been reading, the three beasts had been studying by her side and had never complained. 3 days and 3 nights without rest would indeed be a little tiring. Presumably, the three beasts were the same. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had agreed, the three beasts' eyes lit up with excitement. Master, let's rest together. We'll look for the palace mistress after we wake up, White Lion said with a smile. Chapter 1972. Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen into a deep sleep not long after she had closed her eyes. Over the past 3 days, she had been trying her best to memorize the contents of the book. At the same time that she was forcing herself to memorize the contents, the consumption of her spiritual energy was not small either. Hence, when she closed her eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang felt her head sink and a wave of exhaustion washed over her. The 3B situation was not any better than Bailey Hongzhuang's. On the contrary, they were in a worse state. After all, they did not have Bailey Hongzhuang's abnormal spiritual energy. Hence, over the past 3 days, their heads had become as heavy as 1,000 caddies. Bailey Hongzhuang was resting in a daze when suddenly, a strand of spiritual energy was quietly drawn into the chaos ring and entered it. Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if she was dreaming. She had entered the chaos ring, and a new stone room had appeared in the chaos ring. As she opened the door to the stone room, she saw that the situation in the stone room was just like Nangong Wu's explosives workshop. It was fully equipped. The situation was exactly the same as the first time Bailey Hongzhuang had entered the inscription stone room. There was even a middle-aged man who was explaining the important points of making explosives and demonstrating how to make explosives. When Bailey Hongzhuang woke up from this dream, she could not help but laugh. She really dreamed about what she thought about during the day. If the Chaos Ring really had such a stone room, how great would that be? Now, she really hoped that she would have the chance to learn how to make explosives. If she was really accomplished in this area, she would not mind throwing a few more at the Yu family. Now, she only hoped that the explosives that Mistress had made would have such an effect. Otherwise, the rescue mission would be really difficult. When Bailey Hongzhuang woke up, she saw the three beasts sleeping soundly next to her, and her gaze softened. The three beasts had been accompanying her for the past 3 days. Speaking of which, they were really very concerned about her. Since the three beasts had yet to wake up, Bailey Hongzhuang hesitated for a moment. If she left just like that, the three beasts would definitely be very depressed when they woke up. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of the dream she had. Although she knew it was a dream, the scene in the dream was too real. She also wanted to take a look inside the Chaos Ring. Now that her strength had improved to a certain extent, it was reasonable to say that a new door to the stone room should be opened. In the next instant, Bailey Hongzhuang entered the Chaos Ring. Every time a new door opened in the Chaos Ring, it would be of great help to her. If it weren't for the Chaos Ring, she wouldn't have been able to enrich herself like this. Therefore, she had been looking forward to the opening of the new stone room. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang entered the Chaos Ring, she was surprised to find that there really was a door to a stone room that had opened. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but be filled with excitement. In her line of sight, the appearance of the stone room's door was exactly the same as it had been in her dream. I wonder what's inside. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes sparkled with anticipation. She really wanted to know what was inside. If it really was an explosives workshop, that was simply impossible, right? Chapter 1973. This was because the scene in front of her eyes was exactly the same as what Bailey Hongzhuang had seen in her dreams. The familiar scene, the neatly arranged explosives workshop. Bailey Hongzhuang had thought that Nangong Wu's explosives workshop already had everything she needed. However, the explosives workshop in front of her eyes was undoubtedly larger than Nangong Wu's, and it was even more complete. Besides a few things that she could recognize, there were also many things that she could not recognize. This was simply too shocking. Oh my God. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with shock, followed by a thick sense of surprise. She had never thought that her wish would come true. She had originally hoped that the Chaos Ring would teach her how to make explosives. This was because, according to her understanding of the Chaos Ring, the things inside were often extremely comprehensive and were much stronger than the things in the outside world. Just like inscription techniques, she had never come into contact with inscription techniques in her previous life and did not have much understanding of inscription techniques. However, after studying inscription techniques in the Chaos Ring for a period of time, she had interacted with the inscription masters of the Shengxian continent and discovered that her inscription techniques were already quite good. Just from this point alone, she could judge the power of the Chaos Ring. However, she had never thought that when she was so anxious, the Chaos Ring would send charcoal in snowy weather and provide her with such timely help. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. The Chaos Ring was truly a divine tool. Ordinary things simply could not be compared with such a divine tool. In the explosives workshop, a middle-aged uncle was configuring and explaining the uses of the explosives. The uncle's face was covered with a full beard, revealing a bit of the vicissitudes of life. He looked at the explosives with an indescribable focus. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood that this uncle was very good at configuring explosives. As Bailey Hongzhuang walked closer and sat down in front of the middle-aged uncle, the uncle's gaze fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang. Explosives are a type of weapon. Many people think that the power of explosives is not great enough. Besides causing harm to the common people, as long as a cultivator's strength is strong enough, they will be able to escape from the power of explosives. However, this is not the case. Those people don't understand explosives at all. That's why they said such things. Explosives have many powerful aspects. As long as you are capable enough, you can definitely hurt a powerful cultivator. If a cultivator wanted to use a martial technique, they would need to form hand seals, but explosives could be used instantly. Just from this point alone, we can see how powerful the explosives are. The man explained everything about explosives to Bailey Hongzhuang, a layman. Bailey Hongzhuang listened attentively. She found that the uncle in front of her was talking about the same thing as the master's wife. Master's wife also said that there should be many grades of explosives. It was not that the explosives themselves were not powerful enough to affect powerful cultivators. It was because the people who developed the explosives were not strong enough, and the level of the explosives they made was not high enough, so it could not affect them. In fact, explosives were also divided into different grades. The explosives developed by some geniuses would often have an incomparably powerful influence. Bailey Hongzhuang listened attentively to the uncle's narration and committed the important information to memory. Chapter 1974. Bailey Hongzhuang listened attentively to the uncle's introduction. Compared to reading a book, learning by example was much faster. Moreover, the chaos ring was mysterious, and the way the uncle introduced it was concise and comprehensive. As long as it was something important, he would specifically remind Bailey Hongzhuang to remember it. If it was something unimportant, he would directly skip over it, so that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have to remember it at all. When Bailey Hongzhuang had read the book before, she only felt that the contents of the book were rather muddled. However, she had never come into contact with explosives before, so she could not identify these things. She could only remember everything in her heart. She was waiting to learn from her master's wife, so that she could study properly. Bailey Hongzhuang memorized the important contents one by one. Her spiritual power was already very outstanding, and her memory was also very good. With the two combined, Bailey Hongzhuang memorized the knowledge very quickly. Just like when she had first come into contact with inscriptions, although the situation of explosives was not as complicated as inscriptions, it was still not simple. This was because the amount of each ingredient would affect the effect of the explosives. If the wrong amount was placed, it could lead to injuries. Speaking of alchemy, inscription, and explosives, the explosives technique was the most dangerous of them all. Therefore, when developing explosives, one needed to be 100% careful. Otherwise, if there were any problems, it could lead to injuries. In the process of learning, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that there were not many people in the Shangxian continent who understood explosives, and there were even fewer people who were good at explosives. However, it was clear that the middle-aged uncle in front of her was extremely good at explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang forgot about the time when she started learning, and she greedily absorbed the knowledge. Obviously, learning from this uncle would increase their efficiency by a lot. Master's wife must be helping to develop explosives now, so it was also very good for her to learn more here. Perhaps, in a short period of time, she would not be able to create powerful explosives, but she could share some ideas with Master's wife. In this way, there was hope for all of this. If possible, Bailey Hongzhuang hoped that Master's wife could come to the Chaos Ring with her. With Nangong Wu's obsession with explosives, she would definitely be overjoyed if she saw this middle-aged man. Unfortunately, Nangong Wu could not enter. Bailey Hongzhuang had already tried this before. After telling Di Beichun the secret of the Chaos Ring, she had intended to let Di Beichun understand it as well. If Di Beichun was interested, then it would be great if he could learn some inscription techniques. However, Di Beichun could not enter at all. She also felt that this was very strange. However, Di Beichun had tried many times. Even when Bailey Hongzhuang opened the door, Di Beichun could only see a blank space. However, the three beasts could see it. After thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang and others felt that this must be the owner of the Chaos Ring was Bailey Hongzhuang. So many things could only be used by Bailey Hongzhuang. Although the three beasts could see the situation inside, they had no feeling for this thing and could not learn it. Speaking of which, the only person who could use this was Bailey Hongzhuang. Just like this demon calling scripture, Bailey Hongzhuang could not tell its contents to other cultivators. Therefore, in this situation, Master's wife obviously could not learn it. Chapter 1975. When the three beasties awoke, they were stunned. They never thought that their master would disappear after a short nap. How long have we been asleep? Xiaohei was dumbfounded. She had felt dizzy after she had closed her eyes. Now that she had woken up, she felt much more comfortable. However, she did not know how long she had slept for. The three beasties stared at each other as they listened to Xiao Hei's explanation. In reality, none of them knew how long they had slept. Could it be that Master has gone to the palace mistress's place? White Lion asked. He had only rested after seeing that his master had rested. However, his master's spiritual power was extremely powerful, so her recovery time should be shorter than theirs. Perhaps Master had noticed that they showed no signs of waking up, so she had left first. Hearing White Lion's words, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai immediately straightened their backs. If that was really the case, they should hurry and find their master. Master would not be in any danger in the Limitless Palace. However, they would only feel at ease if they were by Master's side. Just as the three beasties were about to set off for the explosives workshop, a faint light suddenly appeared in their line of sight. The three beasties' eyes lit up. Isn't that the Chaos Ring? Master must have entered the Chaos Ring. White Lion immediately understood. This was the same situation when they had gone to the desert world on a daily basis. Since Master had entered the desert world, the Chaos Ring had revealed itself. The three beasties looked at each other and smiled. They then entered the Chaos Ring together. When the three beasties arrived at the Chaos Ring, they did not see Bailey Hongzhuang, so they began to search for her. Judging by the situation, Master must have stayed in the Chaos Ring for quite some time. However, there's no place in the Chaos Ring for her to go. Xiao Hei frowned. Although the Chaos Ring was large, there were only so many places they could go on a daily basis. Master's heart was now on the explosives. What was she doing in the Chaos Ring? Xiao Bai's eyes lit up. Perhaps a new door to the stone chamber has been opened. It's been quite some time since the last time. It's time to open it. As soon as he said this, Xiao Hei and Baishir looked at each other with anticipation in their eyes. The three beasts were immediately interested in the direction of the stone room. After searching for a while, sure enough, they saw the figure of Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing that the three beasts had woken up, a smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Have you rested well? The three beasts nodded repeatedly, but now their focus had shifted to the explosives workshop in front of them. The moment they opened the door to the stone room, they understood why their master had stayed here for so long. Oh my God, this Chaos Ring is just too miraculous. It knows that Master wants to develop explosives, so it created a stone room to teach Master how to make explosives. While White Lion was amazed, it also felt excited. This was extremely important to its current master. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai also couldn't help but feel excited. This was definitely another piece of good news after finding out the whereabouts of their master's parents. The Chaos Ring is indeed a divine weapon. It understands Master's thoughts too well. Xiao Hei smiled. Chapter 1976. Bailey Hongzhuang stayed in the Chaos Ring for 2 days until she understood a little more. Only then did she go to Nangong Wu's explosives workshop. After all, she only took a few books back to read a few days ago. If there was no news after that, the master's wife would probably feel strange. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang came to Nangong Wu's explosives workshop, she saw Nangong Wu's busy figure. Compared to her usual bright and moving appearance, Nangong Wu was undoubtedly a bit more embarrassed at the moment. Her bright red dress was dyed with a few smears of black. Her hair also revealed a bit of embarrassment. Her bright and dazzling face was a bit more pitch black. Obviously, these were the powder left behind when making explosives. Just from Nangong Wu's constantly busy appearance, it could be seen that in these few days, she had never stopped to rest. Looking at Nangong Wu like this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was a bit touched. If it wasn't for her, Nangong Wu wouldn't need to be so busy. Although this was Nangong Wu's hobby, such a high-intensity development was probably very rare. At this moment, in the explosives workshop, in addition to Nangong Wu, there were a few more strangers that Bailey Hongzhuang had never seen before. However, after thinking carefully, Bailey Hongzhuang already knew that these people must have been invited by the master. She only saw Nangong Wu and these people discussing the method of explosives. Sometimes the discussion was very intense. Looking at Nangong Wu like this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but have a bit of smile in her eyes. Sure enough, the master's wife had a lively appearance when discussing things. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang appear, Nangong Wu's face had a smile for a moment. "Hongzhuang, you're here." Nangong Wu quickly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into the pharmacy workshop. "Why didn't you call me when you came?" After the group of people who studied explosives in the explosives workshop saw Nangong Wu's change of expression, their eyes were constantly changing. One had to know that Nangong Wu was extremely fierce when she was arguing with them just a second ago. In an instant, she had turned into an amiable and approachable person. This change was truly too great. "I saw that you were busy, so I didn't disturb you," Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. "I'm discussing with them how to make a powerful explosive, but there is no definite results so far." Nangong Wu was a little helpless. Although she was usually very interested in this aspect and made a lot of explosives, she didn't have enough confidence in such a powerful explosive. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. She also heard the discussion between Nangong Wu and others just now. It was indeed not an easy thing to make such an explosive. The Yu family had a lot of people. If the explosive was not powerful enough, it would not have any impact at all. She didn't have any understanding of explosives before, so she didn't think it was difficult. However, after learning about explosive from the uncle in the Chaos Ring in these 2 days, she understood that all of this was not so easy. However, the content that the uncle said also gave her some hope. Explosives of that level did exist, and explosives even more powerful than that also existed. It was just that this needed to test their ability to make explosives and the materials. Chapter 1977. The middle-aged uncle was patiently guiding her, and she was extremely serious in her studies. However, she would still need some time to study like this. However, she believed that as long as she put her heart into it, it wouldn't take too long. "Have you finished reading the books I gave you?" Nangong Wu asked. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and smiled. "Yes, I've finished reading them." "That's good. Since you've finished reading them, you must have a certain understanding of explosives." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She was no longer a layman, but she still didn't know much about the manufacturing process. "I have to discuss the manufacturing method with them first. Take a rest first, or go back first. I'll find you later." Nangong Wu thought for a moment before slowly speaking. She had been researching on her own for the past few days. However, the results weren't very good. It wasn't until this morning that the people Yu Linfeng invited arrived, so she was discussing the manufacturing method with them. Right now, she didn't have the time to teach Bailey Hongzhuang. Moreover, there were so many people in the explosives workshop, so Hongzhuang wouldn't understand even if she stayed here. She was very clear that if Hongzhuang didn't understand, she would feel very awkward if she stayed here. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu's expression and understood her thoughts. "All right, Shirmu, then I'll go back first. You must have been reading books without rest these past few days. Go back and rest well." Nangong Wu's eyes revealed a trace of concern. From Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, she could tell that Hongzhuang must have been busy reading books these past few days. Thus, she faintly revealed her exhaustion. Hongzhuang's background was so pitiful. The matter of Lan Yunxiao and his wife must have been pressing down on Hongzhuang's heart. Now that there was finally an opportunity, Hongzhuang's impatience could be imagined. "Mistress, I see that you are more tired than I am. You should rest well." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu with concern and heartache. It was normal for her to be nervous and worried when her parents were in such a situation. But Mistress was also worried about her, so she felt even more apologetic. Ever since he entered the Chaos Ring, he had been learning from the middle-aged man for the past 2 days without any rest. But before he entered the primal chaos world, at least he rested for a while. However, judging from Nangong Wu's current situation, it was obvious that she had not rested for the past few days. Although Nangong Wu's cultivation was higher than hers, but if she didn't rest for a long time, her body wouldn't be able to take it. Although she hoped to save her parents as soon as possible, she didn't want her teacher's wife to be so tired because of her. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Nangong Wu was startled and looked a bit embarrassed. I'm usually like this, so I'm already used to it. You don't need to take it to heart. Nan Gongwu smiled. She hoped that she could help Hong Zhuang and quickly save Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxiao. However, she also didn't want Bailey Hong Zhuang to have more psychological burdens. Hearing Nan Gongwu's words, Bailey Hong Zhuang felt even more moved. Mistress, I know that everything you're doing is for my own good, but if you tire yourself out because of this, I will feel even more guilty. Chapter 1978. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's sincere look, Nan Gongwu was also very touched. She immediately smiled and said, I understand. I will go back and rest after I finish discussing with them. Hearing Nan Gongwu's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang was relieved. If the master's wife was sick because of her, then she would feel the most sorry and would be full of guilt to her master. Hongzhuang, then you should cultivate by yourself for the next 2 days. Nan Gongwu's face was filled with a bright smile. After I finish discussing with them, I will go back and rest. Come find me in 2. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay, master's wife. Before Bailey Hongzhuang left, she also took a few books from Nan Gongwu's explosives workshop. She had been learning about explosives from the middle-aged uncle these days. When she came to Nan Gongwu in a few days, she believed that she had made some progress. If she only read a few books and had such understanding, Nan Gongwu would be surprised. Correspondingly, if she read more books, her performance would not be too strange when the time came. Nan Gongwu also felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were very normal. After all, this matter was Bailey Hongzhuang's own matter. She must be very anxious. At this moment, it was very normal for her to be eager to know the relevant information. Not long after Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the explosives workshop, she saw Yulinfeng. When Yulinfeng saw Bailey Hongzhuang leave, his eyes were filled with doubts. Hongzhuang, is your master's wife not in the explosives workshop? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly and said, Master's wife is discussing with others about making explosives. I can't help with anything now, so I left first. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yulinfeng nodded slightly, his eyes filled with understanding. Go back and have a good rest. You must have worked hard these days, Yulinfeng said with concern. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say much. From Yulinfeng's attitude, she could tell that he definitely wanted to find Shermu. Master's wife hadn't rested for so many days. Given how much Master cared for her, he must be very worried. Master's wife said that she would go back to rest after she finished discussing with those people about making explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang left behind a sentence and walked towards the direction of the palace. The 3 beasts followed behind her. In fact, the 3 beasts also hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to stay in the Chaos Ring for a little longer. With Master's intelligence and wisdom, no matter what he learns, he will definitely succeed. It would just take a bit more time. To Master now, the most important thing was time. If she could stay in the Chaos Ring, they believed that her improvement would be the fastest. However, for the current situation, Nan Gongwu obviously didn't have time to teach Master during this period of time. Therefore, Master still had plenty of time. Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts were the same as the 3 beasts. She hadn't told Master and Shermu about the Chaos Ring yet. Therefore, she had to keep it a secret for the time being. After returning to the palace, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately entered the Chaos Ring. Chapter 1979. After all, the secret of the Chaos Ring was extremely important. Now, once the owner enters the Primordial Chaos Ring, the Primordial Chaos Ring will reveal itself. If others were to find out about this, it would be very troublesome. Bailey Hongzhuang entered the stone room and continued to learn from the middle-aged man. When the middle-aged man saw Bailey Hongzhuang appear, he continued to teach her what he had discussed with Bailey Hongzhuang the last time. Bailey Hongzhuang listened carefully to the middle-aged man's every word and committed it to memory. In the following period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang continued to learn from the middle-aged man. Only when she was too exhausted would she enter into a state of cultivation and cultivate properly. However, in the current situation, cultivation was not the most important thing. Therefore, once Bailey Hongzhuang had recovered, she would enter the Chaos Ring to learn again. When the three beasts saw how serious Bailey Hongzhuang was, they did not want to cause any more trouble for Bailey Hongzhuang. In the process of learning, Bailey Hongzhuang's understanding of the subject had also improved by leaps and bounds. She had gone from being completely ignorant to understanding so much now. This improvement could not be said to be small. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had not begun to develop explosives on her own, she already had a comprehensive understanding of explosives. She only needed to give it a try. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang was still cultivating in the Chaos Ring when Baishir's voice suddenly sounded in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. "Master, the palace mistress is here." Hearing Baishir's voice, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately exited the Chaos Ring. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang exited the Chaos Ring, Nangong Wu's figure appeared in her line of sight. "Hongzhuang, how's your reading these past few days?" Nangong Wu's face was rippling with a faint smile. Her bright and moving face was rosy and enchanting. Obviously, Nangong Wu had just rested, so she came to look for Bailey Hongzhuang. Looking at Nangong Wu like this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a smile. "Mistress, you're here," Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. "I've finished reading the contents of the book." Hearing this, Nangong Wu nodded in satisfaction. "In that case, do you want to study explosives with me today?" Nangong Wu asked. However, she felt that it would be very difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to have a certain level of achievement in the art of explosives before Bailey Hongzhuang's parents were rescued. However, it was also a good opportunity for Bailey Hongzhuang to have a certain understanding of this aspect. "Okay," Bailey Hongzhuang said immediately. She had learned a lot in the Chaos Ring, but until now, she had not tried to make explosives with her own hands. If she did not try it herself, even if she knew a lot in theory, it would not be of much use. Now that she was going to the explosives workshop with Mistress, she could try to develop it herself. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's excited look, Nangong Wu was very happy. She felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was not only because Bailey Hongzhuang was anxious to rescue her parents, but also because Bailey Hongzhuang was interested in explosives. "Since you want to go too, let's not delay. Let's go," Nangong Wu said with a smile. Chapter 1980. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu went to the explosives workshop, Di Beichun also rushed to Tiangang's sect. In the process of rushing, Di Beichun had already caught up with He Mu, so He Mu had not reported this matter to Si Tian. After knowing that Di Beichun had returned alone, Si Tian's eyes were filled with doubt. He knew that Di Beichun accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang to Wuji Palace this time. Logically speaking, they should have returned together. Why did Di Beichun come back alone now? Without waiting for Si Tian to look for Di Beichun had already gone directly to Si Tian's palace. "Master." After seeing Si Tian, Di Beichun bowed deeply. Seeing this, Si Tian smiled and waved his hand. He had always been extremely satisfied with Di Beichun as his disciple and even treated him as his own grandson. What's more, Di Beichun now had another identity, which was his grandson-in-law. This relationship could be said to be extremely close. "Get up. Why did you come back first? Why didn't Hongzhuang come back with you?" Si Tian asked aloud. Seeing this, Di Beichun went straight to the point and said, "Master, Shutian Tower has sent back news." As Di Beichun's voice fell, Si Tian's expression suddenly changed, and his eyes instantly froze. "You said Shutian Tower sent back news?" Si Tian's voice trembled a little. He had always been very concerned about Mu Lingbing's news, but he had waited for so long without any news, so he had been very anxious. If he had not asked Shutian Tower to investigate this news, he would have already taken action himself. However, with his complicated relationship with Yu Siqing, if he went, Yu Siqing would be even more unfavorable to them. It was precisely because of this that he had been restraining his impulse and did not go to look for her. Now that he suddenly heard the news from Shutian Tower, he could not help but feel a little nervous. At this moment, Si Tian's mood was the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's when she first found out about this. He hoped this was good news, but he was worried that this good news would become bad news. If this was really bad news, then he would rather never know this news. Di Baichen noticed the change in Si Tuyin's expression and immediately nodded and said, "Yes, sure, Tian Tower has found the location of Hong Zhuang's parents." Di Baichen knew that Si Tuyin's mood was complicated at the moment, so he directly told Si Tuyin the final result, saving Si Tuyin from more worries. Sure enough, after hearing Di Baichen's words, Si Tuyin's heart, which had been hanging in the air, also relaxed. "Where are they being held captive?" Si Tuyin asked. When he thought about how his daughter and son-in-law had been imprisoned for so many years, his heart couldn't help but twitch. If Mu Jince knew about this, she would definitely be in more pain than him. In the past, she had been kept in the dark and didn't know about this at all, so after so many years. Since Mu Lingbing was married to Lan Yinshao, then Mu Jince must know about this matter. Thinking of this, Si Tuyin's mood became even more complicated. If Mu Jince knew about this matter, then she definitely wouldn't have ignored it for so many years. However, until now, he had not seen Mu Jince, nor had he heard any news about her. Chapter 1981. Si Tuyin was really worried. He had searched for so many years without any results. Could it be that Mu Jince had completely disappeared? Although he felt that this possibility was constantly increasing in his mind, Si Tuyin was still unwilling to believe it. In this life, other than Mu Jince, there was no one else in his heart. If something happened to Mu Jince, then he really had no hope in this life. However, in this situation, the most important thing was to rescue Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. He had never fulfilled any of his responsibilities as a father to his daughter. Now, he only hoped that he had a chance to make up for it. Uncle and aunt have always been imprisoned in the dungeon under Yu Siqing's residence. Di Baichen told Si Tuyin the truth. Now that they knew more and more, his hatred for Yu Siqing grew. Ever since he was young, he had seen many disgusting cultivators. However, the one he hated the most was Yu Siqing. Following Di Baichen's words, Si Tuyin's face instantly turned ugly. His deep, dark eyes were filled with hatred and disgust. A strong killing intent exploded from Si Tuyin's heart. He originally wanted to kill Yu Siqing, but because Yu Siqing knew many things, perhaps it was his only chance to find Mu Jince, so although he hated her, he didn't kill her. However, Yu Siqing had imprisoned his daughter for so many years. More than 10 years. Yu Siqing had imprisoned them all this time. The last time he went to the Yu clan, he was already very close to his daughter, but for some reason, he left just like that. An indescribable pain and regret spread in Si Tuyin's heart. If he had known about this earlier, his daughter wouldn't have suffered so much. Yu Siqing had always stayed in her residence and rarely left. It was because of this that it was very difficult for us to investigate. The Heaven Slaughter Pavilion also spent a lot of effort to confirm the final location. Di Baichen felt somewhat helpless. In the past, he had also thought of this possibility. However, he had never been able to confirm it. Yu Siqing rarely left, and they could not alert the other members of the Yu clan. Hence, they had been trying to gather information from the other members of the Yu clan. However, in the end, no definite results were obtained. Yu Siqing's personality was extremely strange, and she did not have good relationships with others. Even in the entire Yu clan, not many people had much contact with Yu Siqing. As a result, their investigation became even more difficult. Damned Yu Siqing! Si Tuyin clenched his right fist and slammed it on the coffee table. Bang! The tea table collapsed and turned into nothingness. I must kill this vicious woman. Even with Si Tuyin's indifference, he could not help but gnash his teeth at this moment. If it wasn't for Yu Siqing's interference all these years, how could he have ended up in such a situation? He should have had a very good family. No matter if it was Mu Jince, Mu Lingbing, Lan Yinshao, or Hong Zhuang, none of them would have been able to endure such pain. He was the one who started all these mistakes, so he wanted to personally deal with the main culprit. Looking at Si Tuyin's angry appearance, Di Baichen was also very understanding. Chapter 1982. Master, that Yu Siqing is extremely cunning. If you go directly to Yu Siqing to take her life, she will definitely realize that something is wrong. Once the Yu clan is attracted, things will become difficult. If you don't succeed, then uncle and auntie will be in danger. Di Beichan said in a low voice. If it was possible, he also hoped to take Yu Siqing's life directly. However, according to their understanding of Yu Siqing would not easily leave the Yu clan's territory. In this way, the situation would not be so easy to solve. Hearing Di Beichan's words, Si Yin also calmed down. He thought carefully and understood that Di Beichan's words were indeed reasonable. I finally understand why Yu Siqing always stayed within a certain range when I went to look for her. I'm afraid this is also the reason. Di Beichan nodded slightly. For this matter, Hong Zhuang and I have discussed with Palace Master Yu and his wife and decided to use explosives. Explosives? Si Yin frowned slightly. Obviously, he did not expect them to choose such a method. That's right, this is the Palace Master's wife's idea. Di Beichan slowly told Si Yin the whole plan. This matter was extremely important to Si Yin, and Si Yin might have a better idea. After Si Yin understood the whole plan, he pondered for a moment and nodded. This is also a good idea, but ordinary explosives do not have enough power. Si Yin also had a certain understanding of explosives, but because the power of explosives was limited to a certain range, it did not have any effect on stronger cultivators, so he did not pay too much attention to it. However, in terms of movement, the movement of explosives had always been very big, and it did have the effect of attracting people's attention. Di Beichan's expression was also filled with worry. Palace Master's wife has always been very knowledgeable about explosives. Now, Hong Zhuang is staying in Limitless Palace to discuss this matter with Palace Master's wife. Palace Master Yu has also found an expert in this field, but as for the final result, we are not sure. Hearing this, Si Yin nodded slightly. At present, as long as they could make a powerful explosive, this method would work. If they couldn't produce it, then they would have to think of other ways. Give me some time to think about this matter. Determination filled Si Yan's eyes. No matter what, he had to rescue Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao this time. They had been imprisoned for so many years. With Yu Siqing's hatred for him, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao must have suffered a lot. When he thought of this, Si Yin felt extremely guilty. He was the one who had made all these mistakes, yet his junior had to bear the consequences for him. This feeling made him even more uncomfortable. All right, Master, let's think of a better way, Di Beichan said. For such a serious matter, they had to ensure that nothing would go wrong. Si Yin and Di Beichan looked at each other, their eyes filled with determination. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Nangong Wu to the explosives workshop. Compared to the first time she came to the explosives workshop a few days ago, she knew nothing about it. Now, she already knew what these materials were. She was able to distinguish them, which was undoubtedly a great improvement. Chapter 1983. Nangong had a bright smile on her face. Bailey Hongzhuang had read a lot of books these days, and they had introduced a lot of relevant information. Of course, Bailey Hongzhuang could not grasp too much just by relying on the contents of the books. However, Nangong Wu still wanted to test Bailey Hongzhuang. She wanted to know if Bailey Hongzhuang had any talent in explosives. Talent was a very wonderful thing. As long as a cultivator had talent, they would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort when learning about explosives. She hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would have talent. Now, she only needed to test her a little, and she would be able to see how talented Bailey Hongzhuang was in this area. Thinking back, when she first came into contact with explosives, she had a special liking for them. She could even remember some of the special materials very clearly. It was because of this that she discovered that she had a special talent in explosives. Looking at Nangong Wu's smile, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Nangong Wu wanted to test her. A faint smile appeared on her delicate and charming face. If she only relied on the contents of the books before, she did not have much knowledge. However, After studying in the Chaos Ring for the past few days, she had gained quite a bit of understanding of it. Mistress, this is the flame flower. Bailey Hongzhuang pointed at the bright red flower beside her and smiled. Hearing that, Nangong Wu smiled and nodded. That's right, this is the flame flower. What kind of effect does it have? The flame flower's attribute is explosive. After it is developed into powder and added a little when making explosives, the power of the explosives will increase by a lot. However, because its attribute is so violent, you have to be extra careful when you touch the flame flower. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Nangong Wu's eyes brightened. She remembered that in the books she gave Bailey Hongzhuang, there were records of the flame flower. But she did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to remember it so clearly. What about this one? Nangong Wu asked as she pointed at a gray stone at the side. This stone was gray in color and was very inconspicuous. If it wasn't placed in this explosives workshop and was placed somewhere else, it wouldn't be noticed at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the rock that Nangong Wu was pointing at, and the corners of her lips slowly lifted into a smile. This is limestone. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was firm, her voice neither slow nor slow. When a middle-aged man in the Chaos Ring was teaching her, he had asked her to recognize all the materials. Therefore, not only did she remember the appearance of these materials, but she also remembered their attributes and effects clearly. After all, sharpening a knife would not delay the work of cutting firewood. There were many things that needed to be learned from memorizing the materials. If one could not even memorize the materials, then wanting to make explosives was simply a pipe dream. Just like when she first learned medicine, she did not immediately start learning to diagnose. Instead, she started by memorizing the medicinal materials and understanding the properties of the medicinal materials. Only after memorizing the properties of the medicinal materials, when learning to diagnose people's illness, would it have twice the effect with half the effort. The attribute of limestone is also explosive, but it belongs to the opposite type of the flame flower. Chapter 1984. When Bailey Hongzhuang was talking about the characteristics of the limestone, her expression was extremely calm, as if everything was already in her mind, without the slightest bit of nervousness and apprehension. When Nangong Wu saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was so proficient in describing the effects of the limestone, her eyes couldn't help but be filled with a touch of surprise. Although she knew that this matter was related to the safety of Bailey Hongzhuang's parents, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely be extremely attentive and serious when reading this book, but she didn't even think for a moment and directly said the results, which was really a little surprising. Then what about this? Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang understood so clearly, Nangong Wu also decided to test Bailey Hongzhuang properly. She wanted to know how much Bailey Hongzhuang had grasped. After all, the more Bailey Hongzhuang knew, the more she didn't need to repeat the content to Bailey Hongzhuang again, which could also save a lot of time. Facing Nangong Wu's questions, Bailey Hongzhuang explained the attributes and effects of these materials one by one. Recently, she had been remembering the names, characteristics, and attributes of these medicinal materials. One must know that the middle-aged uncle in the chaotic world was not a person to be trifled with. If she didn't remember it and couldn't answer the middle-aged uncle's questions well, the middle-aged uncle would give her a certain punishment. This kind of punishment was not pleasant. So in order to avoid such a punishment and to save her parents, Bailey Hongzhuang could be said to be extremely serious in recording everything. Nangong Wu asked about several materials in a row, and Bailey Hongzhuang answered them all in an orderly manner. The more she asked, the more shocked Nangong Wu was. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had read some books, she didn't have a physical reference. How could Bailey Hongzhuang remember so clearly? At this moment, Nangong Wu couldn't help but feel that Bailey Hongzhuang was really too abnormal. Previously, when she heard Yu Linfeng say that Bailey Hongzhuang had special attainments in many aspects, although she was surprised, it was far from the shock that Bailey Hongzhuang gave her now. One must know that the time she took to remember these materials was very short. It was precisely because of this that everyone said that she had special attainments in this aspect. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had used even less time than her, but she had remembered more than her. This was simply too much to make people speechless. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was a genius, the strength that she displayed was too shocking. Nan Gongwu only felt that the word genius wasn't enough to describe Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. She was simply a demon. She couldn't understand how Bailey Hongzhuang could remember all of this. Originally, she had intended to introduce these materials to Bailey Hongzhuang so that she could feel some sense of accomplishment. However, at this moment, after facing Bailey Hongzhuang, she didn't feel any sense of accomplishment, only a strong sense of defeat. This was too perverse. Yu Linfeng was abnormal. So be it. She never thought that the disciple he found would be so abnormal. Nan Gongwu was really speechless at this moment. She really couldn't find any sense of accomplishment. She only felt that she was nothing. If Bailey Hongzhuang had studied explosives for a little longer, her results would have far surpassed hers. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the originally happy Nan Gongwu, and her expression suddenly changed. Her eyes couldn't help but have a touch of doubt. Chapter 1985. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nan Gongwu in confusion. She didn't understand why Nan Gongwu's expression suddenly became dejected in such a short period of time. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's blank expression, Nan Gongwu helplessly waved her hand and said, "Nothing. I was just thinking in such a short period of time. How did you manage to memorize so much content? It's really amazing." Nan Gongwu's expression recovered very quickly. In a short period of time, she was once again full of smiles. Although she felt a sense of defeat previously, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's huge improvement, she was very happy in her heart. In this way, her explosive skills would have a successor in the future. After all, she could only improve when she communicated with someone who was better at explosive skills. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really a person who didn't have any talent in explosive skills, then she still wouldn't be interested. Hearing Nan Gongwu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, but in her heart, she felt a little guilty. If she only looked at those few books, she wouldn't be able to make such a judgment. However, who asked her to have such a heaven-defying cheat like the Chaos Ring? Hongzhuang, looking at you, you seem to have memorized most of these materials. Nan Gongwu slowly said. She had already asked Bailey Hongzhuang a lot of materials in this area previously, and Bailey Hongzhuang was able to answer her accurately. In this way, they could save a lot of time in this aspect, and use it mainly to make explosives. If you have any materials that you don't know, you can ask me. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, indicating that she understood. She knew all the materials in this explosives workshop. This was because the Chaos Ring had more materials. There were even many materials that were not in the explosives workshop, but in the Chaos Ring, there were many materials that were not in the explosives workshop. Mistress, I know most of the materials here. Why don't we make explosives? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with interest. Until now, although she knew most of these materials, she had never made explosives before. After understanding this content, she felt that counting explosives was a very strange skill. According to the middle-aged uncle in the Chaos Ring, when their explosives count reached a certain level, cultivators could make extremely powerful explosives. They could even integrate their own martial arts into the explosives to continuously increase the power of the explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang was very curious about this point. When cultivators were in a battle, they were most worried that they didn't have enough elemental energy and couldn't support it. If they could integrate their martial arts into the explosives beforehand, then it would be no different from others. They would have more elemental energy than others. In this way, their chances of winning would be much higher. Almost at the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that this was an excellent opportunity. If she could master this kind of explosives, then she would undoubtedly have another tyrannical trump card in the future. However, she had not even made the most basic explosives yet. It was undoubtedly extremely difficult to make that kind of explosives. However, as long as there was hope, Bailey Hongzhuang would not give up. She had understood the use of explosives and the identification of materials for so long, so she was very interested in making explosives. Chapter 1986. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to try making explosives by herself after reading a few books, Nangongwu couldn't help but be shocked. You want to start making explosives now? In the beginning, when Nangongwu was learning explosives, she also had the courage to try it for the first time after understanding all the materials and the process of making explosives. Moreover, when she tried for the first time, she was accompanied by her master. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang's courage was even bigger than her. Now she just read a few books, and she already dared to start making explosives. However, she liked it. She liked this kind of cultivator who dared to do things. If they were timid and stagnant, they would not be able to achieve excellent results. On the contrary, if they just did what they thought, they might have unexpected results. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Nangongwu. Perhaps her current approach was a bit shocking. After all, in the eyes of Nangongwu, she just read a few books, and now she wanted to make explosives. Perhaps in the eyes of the master's wife, she was a bit too unreliable. However, for the current Bailey Hongzhuang, what she needed most was to save time. Therefore, even now, her actions were somewhat shocking in the eyes of Nangongwu, but she still had to do it. Many things were simply unexplainable. Just like in the eyes of many people, she had mastered medical skills, alchemy skills, and inscription techniques. This was something that others could not understand at all. In this case, she didn't mind shocking the world. Some geniuses couldn't be explained by common sense. She believed that when she did it, she didn't need to explain anything anymore. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and said, "Yes, I want to try making it myself." Hearing this, Nangongwu smiled and said, "Okay, then you can try it. I will help you watch by the side. If there is any problem, I will stop you the first time. I won't let any danger happen." Nangongwu's expression was full of affection and appreciation. Now she only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was more and more in line with her character. When a beginner made explosives for the first time, there needed to be a veteran to watch by the side because explosives were originally a very dangerous thing. If there was even the slightest deviation, it could lead to an explosion, which could harm him. Regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang was full of confidence in herself or just wanted to try it herself, she needed to watch from the side. If Bailey Hongzhuang really had the confidence to make explosives successfully, then she was naturally extremely happy, because this proved that Bailey Hongzhuang had a strong talent in this area. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have confidence, but just couldn't resist the impulse to try it, then she could stop Bailey Hongzhuang to realize that this was not a simple thing and continue to learn humbly. Seeing that Nangongwu didn't doubt her at all, but was very happy to let her start making explosives, Bailey Hongzhuang was also a little surprised. However, after thinking about it carefully, she already understood. The character of her master's wife was different from others. Chapter 1987. After confirming that Bailey Hongzhuang was going to try making explosives by herself, Nangongwu stood quietly at the side and watched Bailey Hongzhuang prepare. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the materials needed to make explosives one by one in front of her. Whether it was grinding or baking, Bailey Hongzhuang began to make them one by herself. Although she had not started making explosives under the guidance of the middle-aged uncle in the Chaos Ring, she had seen the middle-aged uncle demonstrate a few times. The middle-aged uncle explained the process of making explosives to her very clearly, and she remembered everything clearly in her heart. Originally, if she continued to learn in the chaos world, she could also start making explosives. However, since the mistress had come to look for her, she would try making explosives in the real world first. After returning to the Chaos Ring at night, she should perform better. After all, the middle-aged uncle this time was extremely powerful. If she failed in making explosives, she would be punished. Therefore, she would try it out in the real world first so that she could avoid physical pain. The three bees stood quietly at the side. They naturally wanted to help their mistress, but in this situation, it was better to pretend that they did not know anything. Nangongwu thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would have some problems in the process of making these materials. Thinking back to the first time she made explosives, she had studied explosives for a longer time than Bailey Hongzhuang. When she tried to make explosive for the first time, she had memorized all the steps in her heart. However, when she really tried it out, there were still many mistakes. This was because there was always a difference between imagination and actual operation. However, so far, Bailey Hongzhuang's production had not made any mistakes. Although her movements were much slower than hers, it was already very good that she did not make any mistakes. Practice makes perfect. As long as she did not make any mistakes when making explosives, it was understandable to spend more time. As Bailey Hongzhuang became more and more skilled, the time could be shortened. Bailey Hongzhuang memorized every step and carried it out one by one in an orderly manner. This was also thanks to Bailey Hongzhuang being an alchemist and an inscription master. She had already developed this kind of methodical character when she was learning these things before. No matter what she was doing, she would not be careless. Therefore, even though it was her first time producing, she was not in a hurry. Finally, in the process of slowly mixing the materials, Bailey Hongzhuang was finally able to mix all the materials. Next, it was time for Bailey Hongzhuang to make the explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but close her eyes. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Nangong Wu's eyes were filled with doubt. She didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing all of a sudden. Compared to Nangong Wu's confusion, the three beasties seemed to understand a lot more. They had been by Master's side for so long and had a certain understanding of Master's actions. Right now, Master was sorting out all the contents. She would only choose to make a move after Master had thought it through. This kind of situation would also occur when a Master was refining a higher-grade pill. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and thought about the process of the middle-aged man making explosives. Chapter 1988. However, she needed to remember everything clearly to ensure that there wouldn't be any problems during the production. After all, she wasn't alone here. Master's wife was here too, and so were the three beasts. If there were any problems, it would be really bad. After a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. She had already thought through all the contents clearly in her mind. Now, she was going to make the explosives according to the middle-aged uncle's method of making explosives. Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, and her heart was filled with admiration. Regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang could successfully make the explosives, at least she didn't make any mistakes when she prepared these materials. Every explosive would fail the first time it was made. As long as she made it a few times, she would be able to succeed. Now, she only felt that she wouldn't be bored when she was developing explosives in the future. With Bailey Hongzhuang's talent, as long as she was willing to study hard, she believed that it wouldn't take long for her to have excellent results in this area. Perhaps, in the future, she could discuss the progress of explosives with Bailey Hongzhuang. Usually, she always studied these by herself, and it was too boring. Now that she had someone close to her to study with her, it was really something to be happy about. In making explosives, the weight of the powder was also very particular. Whether it was a little more or a little less, it could cause a completely different effect. Only with perfect accuracy could the explosives be made successfully. Bailey Hongzhuang weighed the materials with a precision instrument. However, the production of explosives mainly depended on the materials and the specific gravity, which was very difficult. However, during the real production, the mental power consumed was indeed much less than the number of inscriptions and alchemy skills. This was because she only needed to follow a certain order and put the materials together, and the explosives could be made successfully. As long as there weren't any mistakes along the way, there wouldn't be too much of a problem. Therefore, although it was Bailey Hongzhuang's first time making explosives, she was full of confidence in herself. The explosives workshop fell into silence. Bailey Hongzhuang kept adding materials inside, and Nangong Wu was watching from the side. She found that Bailey Hongzhuang's measurement of the materials was very accurate. Regarding this point, she also understood that Bailey Hongzhuang's previous study of inscription technique was also helpful to this point. In Nangong Wu's opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang was likely to succeed in making the explosives this time. Thinking of this, Nangong Wu could not help but be a little surprised. The book that was given to Bailey Hongzhuang did indeed contain the method of making the most common explosives. However, the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang could remember everything so clearly and complete it step by step was truly amazing. As time slowly passed, Bailey Hongzhuang's every movement was extremely careful. Finally, under this configuration, Bailey Hongzhuang successfully completed the production of the explosives. When the three bees saw this scene, their hearts that had been hanging in the air were finally put at ease. After all, the fact that the explosives didn't explode during the process was already a good result. Do you think Master has succeeded? Xiao Hei's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Chapter 1989. She should be able to succeed. Little White pondered for a moment before speaking. However, her tone was still filled with uncertainty. After all, this was Master's first time making explosives. Although it was full of confidence in Master's abilities, it wasn't certain if she would succeed on her first try. Moreover, although it was watching Master's process, it didn't know how to succeed. Master will definitely succeed. Compared to Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's uncertainty, Baisher was full of confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang. To Baisher, he was full of blind worship and confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang. He believed that as long as Master made a move, she would definitely succeed. Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with admiration. Although she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang might succeed this time, when Bailey Hongzhuang actually succeeded, she still felt an indescribable surprise in her heart. Hongzhuang, I didn't expect you to succeed on your first try. It's really shocking. Nangong Wu's face was full of smiles. She finally understood that Yu Linfeng's disciples' talent far surpassed ordinary cultivators in terms of cultivation and other aspects. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang continued to develop like this, her future would definitely be limitless. At this moment, Nangong Wu only felt that the Lan family was really unlucky. Although she heard that Lan Xinyan's strength was also very good, in her opinion, Lan Xinyan was nothing compared to Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang had the same cultivation environment as Lan Xinyan since young, then Bailey Hongzhuang's achievements would definitely be much stronger than the younger generation. Unfortunately, the Lan family liked to pick up sesame seeds and throw away watermelons. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang, Lan Yunxiao was also much better than his older brother, Lan Jingquan. If Lan Yunxiao's family didn't have this unforeseen event, then the Lan family's strength would definitely be much stronger than it was now. When she thought of Lan Jingquan, she felt that he was really a good-for-nothing. For his own fame and status, he could even harm his younger brother's family. He was really shameless to the extreme. She didn't have any good impression of the Lan family. Yu Linfeng had also suffered unfair treatment in the Lan family, which was why he left. Thus, she only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could become better and better. When Bailey Hongzhuang was strong enough to appear in front of others again, she also wanted to see how the Lan family's expressions would be. Although all this didn't happen to her, she could empathize with Bailey Hongzhuang. To Bailey Hongzhuang's Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang's family's family, Bailey Hongzhuang to Bailey Hongzhuang. With Bailey Hongzhuang's personality, as long as she suffered the slightest grievance, she would definitely repay it in every possible way. It was too difficult for her to act as if nothing had happened. However, since Yu Linfeng wasn't willing to do so, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to force him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance gave her some hope. Since she couldn't avenge Yu Linfeng, then she could avenge Bailey Hongzhuang. With her personality that abhorred evil, she only wanted to let the Lan family taste the consequences of their excessive actions. Hearing Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but reveal a smile. Chapter 1990. I also didn't expect to succeed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Although she was only making the simplest type of explosive, but no matter what, there was always an indescribable joy in making it for the first time. Hong Zhuang, you are really a genius. Nan Gongwu was not stingy with her praise. Over the years, she had seen many talented people in this area. However, to be able to successfully make explosives in just a few days like Bailey Hongzhuang, other than Bailey Hongzhuang, there was no one else. Listening to Nangong Wu's praise, Bailey Hongzhuang felt ashamed. She was very clear in her heart that if it wasn't for the guidance of the middle-aged uncle, just relying on those few books was far from enough. However, since the master's wife had already decided, she would not explain anymore. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't speak, Nangongwu only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was embarrassed by her praise. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament was usually very modest. She was definitely not a playboy. Hongzhuang, since you have successfully made this explosive, why don't we go and test the power of this explosive? Nangongwu's eyes were filled with excitement. She had seen Bailey Hongzhuang's process of making the explosive. There was basically no problem. Presumably, the power of the explosive was also not bad. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. In fact, she still had some doubts about the explosive that she made. According to the book that Nangongwu gave her, the amount of weight was slightly different from the amount that the middle-aged uncle taught her. She didn't know who was right and who was wrong, but according to her understanding of the Chaos Ring, she felt that the method in the Chaos Ring might have a better effect. After all, her inscription technique was like this. Master's wife, where are we going to check the power of the explosive? Although what she made was only the lowest grade of explosives, but now that they were in Limitless Palace, if she were to directly throw out the explosives, she was afraid that it would cause a group of disciples to be surprised. After all, no one would dare to cause such a huge commotion in Limitless Palace. Those who didn't know would think that someone was attacking Limitless Palace. This kind of thing couldn't be done. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's worried expression, Nangongwu smiled and said, "With me here, don't tell me there isn't a place to experiment. I often make explosives on a daily basis. In order to make it convenient for me to test the effects of explosives, your master specially prepared a place for me to test the power of explosives." Nangongwu waved at Bailey Hongzhuang and walked out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties followed behind Nangongwu and walked towards the back of the explosives workshop. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang thought that the location of the explosives workshop was extremely far back. She never thought that there would be another place behind the explosives workshop. The three beasties' eyes revealed a look of curiosity. They didn't expect that there were so many places in Limitless Palace that they didn't know about. From this, it could be seen that Yulin Feng really doted on Nangongwu. He actually prepared so many things for her. Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind Nangongwu for a distance. Finally, an open space appeared in front of her. Chapter 1991. It was obvious that Nangongwu often tested the power of the explosives here, which was why this place was in such a mess. Bailey Hongzhuang had just walked to the place where the explosives were tested, and she knew that there was a soundproof array here. No matter how big the commotion was, no sound would leak out. In this way, they could peacefully test the power of the explosives here. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh. Master had really prepared everything for his wife. "It's here." Nangongwu's face was filled with a satisfied and proud smile. "I usually test the power of the explosives here. There's an array here that your master specially set up for me, and it has a soundproof effect. In this way, no matter how we test the explosives here, no one will listen." Nangongwu smiled as she introduced. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was filled with a happy smile. Master is really thoughtful for his wife. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the smile on Nangongwu's face became even brighter. One of the things that she was most proud of in her life was being able to be together with Yulin Feng. No matter if it was in the past or now, Yulin Feng had always been extremely good to her. As a woman, this was her greatest happiness. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangongwu's happy expression, and the smile in her eyes deepened. Speaking of which, Master and his wife were really a pair of lovers that everyone envied. Nangongwu noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, and her face couldn't help but turn red. As an elder, she actually said such words in front of the younger generation. She really didn't know shame. Nan Gongwu immediately straightened her expression and said, "Let's start now." The three beasties saw Nan Gongwu's expression change in an instant, and a smile of understanding appeared on their faces. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood as well, but Nan Gongwu's true nature was really cute. Sometimes, she felt that such a cute mistress didn't seem like an elder at all, but appear instead. "All right." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and immediately walked into the array. Nan Gongwu and the three beasties stood outside the array, and Bailey Hongzhuang also retreated after igniting the explosives. This array not only had the effect of isolating sound, it could also prevent the power of the explosives from leaking out. However, the array's range was huge, and with the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's explosives, it was obviously not enough to activate the array. Bang! A huge explosion rang out, and a deep crater quickly appeared on the ground within the array formation. Smoke and dust spread everywhere, blurring everyone's eyes. Looking at the result of the explosions, Bailey Hongzi's eyes, Bailey Zhuang's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's, after all, it was her first time making explosives, and to be able to produce such power already made her extremely satisfied. However, Nan Gongwu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. The effect of the explosives caused her heart to be filled with doubt and puzzlement. How is this possible? Nan Gongwu looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. Bailey Hongzhuang's first time making was the simplest type of explosives, and she had also made the same type of explosives for the first time in the past. However, the explosives she had made then weren't as strong as Bailey Hongzhuang's, and it was barely half of Bailey Hongzhuang's explosives. Chapter 1992. After the three beasties saw the effect of the explosives made by Bailey Hongzhuang, their hearts couldn't help but be filled with deep joy. I knew it. Based on Master's abilities, there wouldn't be any problems. White Lion puffed out its chest as its eyes filled with pride. It had always believed that its master would be able to complete it. Reality had told it that it was never wrong to believe in its master. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were overjoyed as well. Even though they had been a little worried that their master would not be able to complete it successfully, the joy in their hearts grew even stronger after witnessing this scene. Master is really amazing. She managed to complete it in such a short period of time. Xiao Hei's heart was filled with excitement. Even though its master had been learning from the middle-aged uncle in the Chaos Ring, this time was still very short. It believed that even if other cultivators received the same treatment as its master, they would still not be able to catch up to its master. That's right. Perhaps Master could personally create such a powerful explosive and turn the Yu family upside down. Once it thought of this, Xiaobai could not help but feel excited. The Yu family members were extremely detestable. Even if they could not attack the Yu family now, they would be happy to see the Yu family being affected and thrown into chaos when they were rescuing their master's parents. After all, the Yu family had been arrogant for so many years. It was time for them to suffer the consequences of their actions. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard Nan Gongwu's words, her pitch-black almond-shaped eyes could not help but fill with suspicion. She had felt that the power of her explosives was not too bad. Why would Mistress say that? Could it be that there was a problem with the explosives that she had created? Mistress, what's wrong with my explosives? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask. When she heard Bailey Hongzhuang's question, Nan Gongwu did not reply immediately. Instead, she walked into the formation. She had been standing quite far away earlier on and had only seen the power of the explosion from afar. She had not been able to see it clearly. However, when Nan Gongwu walked closer and saw the gigantic crater, her heart could not help but gasp in surprise. She had not seen wrongly. The power of this explosion was much stronger than the simplest explosives. Hongzhuang, how did you make these explosives? Nan Gongwu couldn't help but ask. Previously, she had noticed that the materials Bailey Hongzhuang had prepared were nothing special. They were the most basic materials used for explosives. Moreover, she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had used the same amount of materials in the first few batches. At that time, she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was very careful with every step she took, and there was no difference in the amount of food she took. She was relieved and did not continue watching. In her opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang was not only an alchemist, but also an inscriptionist. Therefore, she was particularly sensitive to the weight of materials. There would be absolutely no problem. But why was the explosive made by Bailey Hongzhuang stronger than ordinary explosives when they were made of the same material? Nangong Wu felt as if she had seen an opportunity. In the past, she had only thought that the effects of the most ordinary explosives would be the same. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang had tried it today, she had actually opened up a new world. It was simply too surprising. I made it according to the normal situation. Mistress, is there a problem? Chapter 1993. Previously, she had already noticed that some of the materials mentioned in the book were different from the materials that the middle-aged uncle taught her. After thinking for a moment, she still followed the middle-aged uncle's instructions to make the explosives. After all, she also wanted to know the difference between the method that the middle-aged uncle taught her and the method of making ordinary explosives. Now that she saw her master's wife's reaction, she knew that the difference did exist, and the difference was not small. If not, her master's wife would definitely not reveal such a serious expression. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Nangong Wu was even more puzzled. She felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's process of making explosives must be different from ordinary methods. Otherwise, the difference in explosives would definitely not be so big. Hongzhuang, the explosives you made are twice as powerful as the most basic explosives. Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a serious expression. It was clearly the same material, but it had such a different effect. If she knew where the problem was, she would have a better research direction. In the past, she had never been able to find a direction. How could she increase the power of the explosives? This had been troubling her for many years. However, the explosives that Bailey Hongzhuang made today gave her a completely different feeling. It was as if she had discovered a new continent, which made her extremely happy. Following Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart could not help but be shocked. Although she only thought that there was a difference in the production, she never thought that there would be such a huge difference in the power. Nangong Wu could not help but walk to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and directly grab Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Her bright and beautiful face was filled with anticipation and eagerness. Hongzhuang, tell me in detail, how did you make the explosives just now? Nangong Wu nervously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, hoping that Bailey Hongzhuang could still clearly remember the manufacturing process. You have to tell me the steps of your production clearly. Don't leave out anything. Over the past few days, I've been researching how to increase the power of explosives with other explosives masters, but we haven't been able to find a good way. I didn't expect the explosives you made this time to be twice as powerful as ordinary explosives. If we can find out where the problem lies and apply it to a higher level of explosives, then its power will be greatly increased. Nangong Wu couldn't help but tell Bailey Hongzhuang the importance of this matter. Only in this way would Bailey Hongzhuang think about it carefully. When the three beasties heard Nangong Wu's words, they were even more surprised. I didn't expect that the first explosive that Master made would have such an amazing effect. It seems that Master is really a genius. I didn't think that the explosives that Master refined would be so powerful. It seems that Master's attainments in the art of explosives will be very shocking in the future. Xiaohei couldn't help but sigh. Previously, it didn't think that this was very impressive. However, after hearing Nangong Wu's words, it completely understood. The things in the Chaos Ring are indeed amazing. It's best for Master to learn from that middle-aged uncle. Xiaobai slowly said. Chapter 1994. Looking at Nangong Wu's nervous expression, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately nodded and told Nangong Wu the entire process. Especially when it came to the subtle differences, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more careful. You said that the ratio of the sky ardent stone powder is 5 grams. With Nangong Wu's understanding of explosives, she immediately reacted when Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned the slight difference. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I put in 5 grams. Did I put in the wrong amount? Bailey Hongzhuang's face pretended to be confused, as if she really had just remembered wrongly and accidentally put in too much. You should put in 4 grams of sky ardent stone powder. Nangong Wu curiously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, only to see Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression. It didn't seem like she was faking it. I always thought it was 5 grams. Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a vexed expression, as if she was dissatisfied with herself for remembering wrongly. However, Nangong Wu was extremely excited. You made a mistake. If you didn't make a mistake by accident, how could we have made such a discovery? Nangong Wu's face was full of smiles. Go on, tell me about the weight of the other materials. In the end, Nangong Wu found that when Bailey Hongzhuang was making the explosives, there was a difference in the amount of 2 materials that caused such a change. So, it's because of the difference in the amount of sky ardent stone powder and sulfate stone powder. Nangong Wu's eyes shone brightly, as if the sky was filled with stars, shining brightly. Hongzhuang, I have to go back and do some research. If I find anything, I'll come to you. Perhaps whether or not we can successfully make the explosives this time depends on this opportunity. You should go back and cultivate. After saying that, Nangong Wu didn't care about Bailey Hongzhuang behind her. She turned and ran towards the direction of the explosives workshop. She really couldn't wait to try it out. In the past, she only thought about what materials to add to increase the power. She never thought that changing the ratio of materials would cause a difference in power. Now, she only felt that her heart was filled with inspiration and endless possibilities. She had to experiment properly. Looking at Nangong Wu leaving just like that, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. Master's wife's impulsive personality obviously wouldn't change in this lifetime. The 3 beasts stared blankly as Nangong Wu disappeared from their sight at lightning speed. Their expressions were lifeless and helpless. Master we now? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Let's go back to the palace. Master's wife won't be coming to find us for a while. I'll take advantage of this time to study more. To Bailey Hongzhuang, she also looked forward to having more time to learn from the middle-aged uncle. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately returned to the bedroom with the 3 beasts. Then, she immediately entered the chaos ring. She had already learned about the materials and the manufacturing process from the middle-aged uncle. She believed that the middle-aged uncle would start to let her learn how to make explosives. Yulin Feng didn't know what had happened. Nangong Wu suddenly went into seclusion and stayed in the explosives workshop without sleeping or resting. He had gone to take a look before, but was chased out by Nangong Wu in a flustered and exasperated manner. Seeing this, Yulin Feng was shocked. He didn't expect to see Nangong Wu in such a state again after so long. Chapter 1995. To the current her, creating powerful explosives was very important. Raising her own strength was also very important. Now that she finally had the chance to rescue her parents, she definitely couldn't just wait by the side. She had to join in the action. Moreover, once she appeared, she believed that her parents would definitely recognize her. After all, when her grandfather first saw her, he was extremely shocked. Presumably, she looked similar to her grandmother. Presumably, she also looked very similar to her mother. In this way, as long as her parents saw her, they would definitely recognize her. If she wanted to rescue 2 living people like this, it would be very easy for the Yu clan to find out. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had already thought of a way to deal with it. As long as she brought her parents into the chaos ring, it would be much easier for them to leave. Time slowly passed. With each passing day, Bailey Hongzhuang's understanding of explosives was rapidly increasing. Bang! On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang had just come out of the chaos ring when she heard an explosion. Her eyes couldn't help but be filled with astonishment. This explosion was extremely loud and clear. Even the entire limitless palace was shaken by this explosion. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately walked out of the palace and looked towards the direction of the explosion. Smoke and dust filled the air. The unique smell of explosives quickly spread out. Other than Nangong Wu's explosives workshop, where else would there be such a commotion? Master's wife, did you blow up the explosives workshop? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with bewilderment. If Mistress wanted to test the power of the explosives, she could totally go to the testing area at the back. However, the place where the explosion happened was obviously where the explosives workshop was located. Could it be that there was a problem? The three beasties looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Nangong Wu's actions are a little too frightening, right? Xiaohei swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It was already late at night. Most likely, all the cultivators who were resting would have been awakened. This is the rhythm of blowing up the limitless palace. I'm guessing the others are also dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't hesitate to rush in the direction of the explosives workshop. If the master's wife accidentally exploded while making the explosives, it would be terrible. Just by looking at the commotion, one could tell how powerful the explosives were. If they had accidentally exploded, then Mistress would not have been able to leave in time. As Bailey Hongzhuang quickly left, the three beasts followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang and flew forward. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties were rushing over, there was another figure who was even faster than them. That was Yu Linfeng. Nangong Wu had stayed in the explosives workshop for so many days. Although Yu Linfeng felt helpless, he knew that if he disturbed Nangong Wu at this time, Nangong Wu would definitely be unhappy. However, he never thought that such an unforeseen event would occur. Not only that, the power of the explosives this time was much stronger than any of the explosives that Nangong Wu had tested in the past. If there was any danger, Yu Linfeng couldn't imagine what would happen. However, when Yu Linfeng arrived at the explosives workshop, the scene he saw filled him with helplessness. Bailey Hongzhuang followed closely behind Yu Linfeng. However, when she saw the scene in front of her, her feelings were no different from Yu Linfeng's. Chapter 1996. Ha! I finally made such a powerful explosive. Nangong Wu's face was char-black. The smoke and dust had already covered her face, but it couldn't cover her excitement. I never thought that Nangong Wu, would actually be able to make such a powerful explosive. I'm really excited, haha. Nangong Wu laughed as she sighed. Even though her face was covered with dust, her eyes were unprecedentedly bright. Nangong Wu saw Yu Linfeng and Bailey Hongzhuang and quickly rushed over. She smiled and said, Linfeng, Hongzhuang, I've succeeded. I've finally succeeded. Yu Linfeng didn't care about Nangong Wu's happiness. After carefully inspecting Nangong Wu's body, he finally relaxed after discovering that there weren't any injuries on her body. I'm not injured, don't worry, Nangong Wu said. Hearing this, Yu Linfeng felt even more helpless. With such a mischievous wife, he was also extremely helpless. Hongzhuang, what do you think about the power of my explosive? It should be able to cause quite a commotion in the Yu clan, right? Nangong Wu said excitedly. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu, who was dancing with joy in front of her. At the same time, she was also a little touched. At this kind of time, Mistress was still thinking about how to cause a commotion in the Yu clan. This commotion is very big. All the disciples of Limitless Palace have been awakened by this commotion, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Previously, when she was rushing to the explosives workshop, she saw the disciples of the various palaces walking out of their sleeping quarters one after another. They looked at the direction of the explosives workshop in puzzlement, discussing spiritedly. However, at that time, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care about what these cultivators were talking about. She immediately rushed over. All the disciples of Limitless Palace have been awakened by me? Nangong Wu raised her eyebrows in excitement. If that's the case, then this power is pretty good. Ha! Yu Linfeng grabbed Nangong Wu. Even though he couldn't see Nangong Wu's face clearly, he knew that Nangong Wu hadn't had a good rest for so many days. She must be exhausted. All right. Now that you've made the explosives to your heart's content, You can finally go back and have a good rest. I'll have to inform the elders later. Many of the disciples think that Yochi's sect has come to attack. Yu Linfeng's elegant face was filled with helplessness and indulgence. He really didn't know what to do with Nangong Wu. Hong Zhuang, I have something to tell you. Nangong Wu, on the other hand, was unable to contain her excitement. It's all thanks to your discovery that day that I was able to create such a powerful explosive. Nangong Wu pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. She was really grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang for allowing her to have a better understanding of explosives. However, without waiting for Nangong Wu to finish speaking, Yu Linfeng had already knocked Nangong Wu unconscious. When Nangong Wu collapsed, Yu Linfeng immediately carried Nangong Wu up. Your master's wife is too tired these days. Let her sleep for a while. After she wakes up, you two can have a good chat. He and Nangong Wu had been together for such a long time. He understood Nangong Wu's temperament very well. If she were to continue like this, it wouldn't take long for her to fall into a coma. The damage to her body would be extremely great. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Let's let Master's wife have a good rest. Chapter 1997. Bailey Hongzhuang followed her back to her bedroom. She felt that Nangong Wu was indeed a genius in the field of explosives. She had only given Nangong Wu a direction, but Nangong Wu was able to create such powerful explosives so quickly. It was really amazing. Xiaohei, Xiaobai, Bai Shi, do you think that Mistress's explosives are powerful enough? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three beasts in front of her and asked. It should be enough. At most, we can throw a few more. This has even shocked Limitless Palace. If we throw a few more, the Yu clan would definitely be shocked. Xiaohei said after thinking. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I also feel that the explosives are very powerful. It should be enough. Thinking until here, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel excited. After waiting for so long, she finally had the chance to rescue her parents. Not only that, she also had some ideas about how to create explosives. The Chaos Ring was really too human-like. After she tried to communicate with the middle-aged uncle, he actually agreed to teach her how to create an extremely powerful explosive. She had not created it yet. However, after she created it, she would throw a few at the Yu clan and collect the interest first. That means that we can go to the Yu clan very soon. Bai Shi said excitedly. Now that things had come to this, he was really happy for his master. Following Bai Shi's words, Xiaohei and Xiaobai's eyes lit up. They had prepared for so long. Wasn't it all for this? Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. When Mistress wakes up, she will definitely start creating the explosives. Once everything is done, we can set off. After Yu Linfeng sent Nangong Wu back to her bedroom, he told the various palace masters about the cause of the commotion. The power of the explosion just now was not small. The disciples were all in a state of panic, so he had to calm them down first. When the disciples of Limitless Palace found out what had happened, they too came to a realization. After all, they had long heard that the mistress liked to create explosives. The mistress is really powerful. The movement of the explosives is actually so big. This is the first time I've seen such powerful explosives. It's far beyond my knowledge. Since there are no enemies attacking, we can go back and rest in peace. After the disciples sighed, they all returned to their own houses. However, they felt that Nangong Wu was even more powerful. Although the palace master was a genius, the mistress was also not to be trifled with. After Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the palace, she began to learn how to make explosives from the middle-aged uncle. The master's wife's explosives had already been successfully made, so it was time for her to start making explosives. To prepare to create a commotion in the Yu clan. When the time came, Nangong Wu hadn't rested for many days. She was just relying on her excitement to support herself. Now that he had fallen into a deep sleep, he only felt that his entire body was exhausted to the extreme. His tense mind had also completely relaxed. This sleep lasted for 7 days. In these 7 days, Bailey Hongzhuang had also mastered how to create the explosives. However, the materials in the Chaos Ring were all virtual. She could not use them in real life. Chapter 1998. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry. With Mistress's rich inventory, it should not be difficult to gather these materials. However, what she needed most now was to wait for Mistress to wake up. When Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating in the Heaven Stairway, she finally heard Nangong Wu's voice. "Hongzhuang, are you there?" Nangong Wu's excited voice was like the sound of nature in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately stood up and walked out of the Heaven Stairway. As expected, Nangong Wu was standing outside the palace with a smile on her face. Compared to the haggard and miserable appearance 7 days ago, the Nangong Wu today was obviously full of energy and vigor. "Mistress, have you rested well?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Nangong Wu smiled and nodded. "Of course, I didn't think that I would be able to sleep for so long. I think you must have been waiting anxiously, right?" "No." Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and said, "I already know how to make such a powerful explosive. Lin Feng is helping me to prepare the materials. I will start making in a while. After I have finished making it, you can set off to the Yu clan." Nangong Wu couldn't hide the excitement on her face. Although this matter didn't happen to her, she still regarded Bailey Hongzhuang as her own disciple. Being able to help her disciple solve such a huge problem was naturally something she was happy to see. "Then I will have to trouble Mistress." Bailey Hongzhuang did not decline. For the current situation, this was indeed very important. Nangong Wu waved her hand. "What's so difficult about this?" "Mistress, I still have one more thing to ask for your help," Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Hearing this, Nangong Wu raised her eyebrows and patted her chest. "Say it. No matter what it is, as long as I can do it, I will definitely help you. I also want to make explosives. I hope that Mistress can provide some materials." Right now, she really did not have any materials at all. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook a meal without rice. This kind of small matter, no problem. Nangong Wu thought it was something important, so it was just this. "Then come with me to the explosives workshop. We will make the explosives together in a while. I can't watch you today. You must be careful when you make the explosives." From Nangong Wu's point, Bailey Hongzhuang's hands was itching to make the explosives after the first time. This was very normal. Many beginners would have this kind of thoughts. "Thank you, Mistress." And Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu immediately walked towards the direction of the explosives workshop. And when Bailey Hongzhuang came to the explosives workshop again, her eyes were filled with a touch of emotion. A few days ago, Mistress had just razed this place to the ground, and now a brand new explosives workshop had appeared again. Not only that, the things inside were still complete. Master's actions were really fast. Coincidentally, I felt that the previous explosives workshop was a bit small. After razing it to the ground and building it again, it was much bigger. After all, I will not be here alone in the future. You will definitely come here sometimes. It is most suitable to be as spacious as it is now. Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a face full of smiles. "Look over there. It will be the place where you make the explosives in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang looked carefully and realized that the explosives workshop had been divided into 2 parts, which were exactly the same. Chapter 1999. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel touched. She didn't think that her master and master's wife would actually prepare so well for her. Previously, when you were making explosives for the first time, I had already told Lin Feng about this idea. Nangong Wu's face was full of smiles. "Your talent in explosives is so high. In the future, your attainments in this area will definitely surpass mine. If there isn't a place that specializes in making explosives, it would be too inconvenient. Moreover, this place is very close to the place where the explosives are tested, so it couldn't be more convenient. Furthermore, in the future, we can discuss how to make explosives together. This is simply something that I have always dreamt of. I'm really too happy." Nangong Wu's face was filled with excitement. In the past, there was no one to accompany her. Now, she had finally achieved her goal. Master's wife, thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with gratitude and sincerity. You and Master are really good to me. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but rejoice. If she didn't participate in the examination competition, then she wouldn't have been able to become Yu Linfeng's disciple. She also wouldn't have met Nangong Wu. Naturally, she wouldn't have everything that she had now. Master and Master's wife were so concerned about her, thinking about her in every way. First, they specially made a bedroom for her. Now, they even prepared an explosives workshop for her. When Nangong Wu saw Bailey Hongzhuang's moved expression, her heart also softened. Linfeng and I don't have any relatives in this world. You're just like our daughter. With your arrival, we also feel very happy. Let's make the explosives first. The most important thing now is to complete the explosives. Then, we could go to the Yu clan. Nangong Wu was obviously not used to this kind of emotional scene. Thus, after saying a few words, she changed the topic. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood Nangong Wu's character. She immediately smiled and nodded, saying all right. As soon as she got close to the explosives workshop, Nangong Wu's face immediately turned serious. After telling Bailey Hongzhuang to be more careful when making the explosives, she began to make the explosives herself. The last time, not long after she successfully made the explosives, she had fainted. However, she still remembered the process of making the explosives clearly. Now, she needed to make a few sets of explosives, but at that time, everything here had been blown to smithereens, so she needed time to think about it. Seeing that Nangong Wu let her make her own explosives, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't ask for more. She was originally worried that Nangong Wu would watch her make it. This set of explosives was her gift to the Yu clan. This time, when she went to the Yu clan, she wanted to give them a gift first. Leave, S uses st cause t. The Yu clan must have approved of Yu Siqing's plan. If the Yu clan didn't help, Yu Siqing and Yu Manlon wouldn't have been able to do this. This was the plan of the entire Yu clan. Aristocratic families had always been unscrupulous in order to achieve their goals. Chapter 2000. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang's target was not only Yu Siqing and Yu Manlon, but also the entire Yu clan. However, the future was long, and she had plenty of opportunities. She believed that this day would not be too far away. The Yu clan would definitely suffer the consequences of their own actions. At least, from the day she transmigrated into Bailey Hongzhuang, the Yu clan was already destined to suffer the consequences. For a time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu were both diligently making the explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang had already tried to make this kind of explosive many times when she was in the Chaos Ring. Because this kind of explosive was not ordinary, the difficulty of making it was much higher. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was still full of confidence. The three beasts quietly stayed at the side. This kind of environment was not to be disturbed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu put all their thoughts on making the explosives. At this time passed by abnormally fast. After a period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang finally stopped. Her elegant and charming face was surrounded by a confident and dazzling radiance, and her pair of shining eyes were filled with a sharp light. She had already successfully made the explosives. She was looking forward to the effect it would cause in the Yu clan. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had finished making the explosives, the three beasts looked at each other, and a hint of excitement appeared in their eyes. They would be able to take action very soon. Thinking about it, this was really something to look forward to. After Bailey Hongzhuang finished, she saw that Nangong Wu was still immersed in making the explosives. She quietly stood at the side and watched Nangong Wu make the explosives without disturbing her. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the process and steps of Nangong Wu making the explosives, her eyes could not help but be filled with a hint of amazement. She had also seen the middle-aged uncle make explosives in the Chaos Ring, but the level of the explosives was also not low, so she had never made one before. She didn't expect that Nan Gongwu would be able to do this after she told Nan Gongwu some problems a few days ago. It could be seen that Nan Gongwu was very good at this. Bailey Hongzhuang secretly decided that once she learned more useful knowledge about explosives, she would definitely tell Nan Gongwu. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was quietly waiting for Nan Gongwu to finish, suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps outside the door. Hearing the footsteps, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and walk out of the room. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the three people standing outside the Scissors house, her eyes couldn't help but emit a warm light. These three people were Yulin Feng, Di Beichun, and Situ Yin. "Grandfather, why are you here?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Situ Yin in astonishment. She didn't expect her grandfather to personally come to Limitless Palace. It was really out of her expectations. When Situ Yin saw Bailey Hongzhuang, his face revealed a smile. "Since such a big thing happened, I naturally have to come." Ever since Situ Yin found out about this news, he kept thinking about how to save them. There was no doubt that he would be able to save Mu Ling Bing and the other person. If he couldn't think of a way, Situ Yin didn't mind directly killing them. Even if there might be some consequences, Situ Yin couldn't care less. It was obviously too late to make a detailed plan, but since they already knew where Mu Ling Bing and the other person were, they couldn't let this matter continue to develop. Chapter 2001. Listening to Si Tuyin's words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. She had always known that her grandfather was very worried about her parents' situation. It was precisely because of this that Di Beichen had already gone back to inform her grandfather the moment they heard the news. When Yulin Feng heard Bailey Hongzhuang addressing Si Tuyin as grandfather, he sighed in his heart. He had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Si Tuyin would have such a relationship. When Hongzhuang told them the news previously, they were already very shocked. At this moment, after seeing Hongzhuang and Si Tuyin with their own eyes, he was even more amazed in his heart. Perhaps all of this was destined by the heavens. Originally, he was still worried that Hongzhuang would want to take revenge. She had to deal with the Lan family and the Yu family at the same time. This was not an easy task. However, now that Tiangang sect had joined the alliance, this matter had become much simpler. Even if it was Si Tian, he could not just watch his daughter and son-in-law being bullied like this and not care about it. Just from the fact that Si Tian came to Limitless Palace after hearing the news, it could be seen how much importance Si Tian attached to this matter. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen also revealed a smile on his face. Master's wife has already made a more powerful explosive. It's now in the process of making it. When it's done, we can see how effective it is. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a bright smile. She believed that her grandfather and Di Beichen would be very happy after hearing the news. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and Si Tian's faces revealed a smile as expected. "We have already heard about this matter from Palace Master Yu on the way here. I didn't expect Palace Master's wife to have such deep attainments in this aspect. It's really amazing," Di Beichen said with a smile. Originally, he was still worried that if he could not make the explosive successfully, then this trip would be full of difficulties. However, he didn't expect that the palace mistress would be able to successfully make the explosives in such a short period of time after he left Limitless Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Ma Am's talent in this area is far beyond ordinary people. Palace Master Yu, it's all thanks to you and your wife." Situ Yin turned around and saw Yulin Feng. His words were filled with gratitude. With regards to Jade Forest Mountain, Situ Yin was similarly filled with emotions. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already told him about Yulin Feng. He had never thought that Yulin Feng was also a member of the Lan family. In the past, he didn't feel much about the Lan family because they didn't have much contact with each other. However, now that he knew everything, he really felt that the Lan clan was extremely stupid. If Yulin Feng was still a member of the Lan clan, then the Lan clan's strength would definitely be much stronger than it was now. Many people were guessing Yulin Feng's true identity, because Yu Linfeng seemed to have appeared out of thin air. No one knew which force he came from. If others knew that Yu Linfeng only had his current achievements after being forced to leave the Lan clan, they would definitely be shocked. Hearing Situ Yan's words, Yu Linfeng's elegant face was filled with a faint smile. Sect Master Situ, you're too polite. Chapter 2002. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, the smile on Situ Yan's face widened. It's Hong Zhuang's blessing that Palace Master Yu is willing to accept Hong Zhuang as her disciple. Saying that, Situ Yan and Yu Linfeng looked at each other and smiled. They were extremely satisfied with Hong Zhuang. At this time, there was no need to say anything else. Then let's wait here for a while. After Wu is done making the explosives, we'll see how powerful they are. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Situ Yan and the others nodded. They were already very glad to be able to hear the good news as soon as they arrived at Limitless Palace. He believed that since Palace Master Yu said so, there should be no problem with the power of the explosives. Originally, they were still worried about what to do if the explosives were not successfully made. Now, it seemed that all of their problems could be solved. At this moment, Di Beichen and Situ Yan's hearts relaxed a little. Since things had developed to this point, they would be able to take action very soon. Just as Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others were talking, Nangong Wu had already finished making the explosives. Although Nangong Wu was making the explosives in the explosives workshop, she had heard the conversation outside. Therefore, at this moment, she walked out as soon as she finished making the explosives. Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others immediately focused their gaze on Nangong Wu. Nangong Wu's face also revealed a smile. Sect Master Situ, Nangong Wu said. Hearing that, Situ Yan smiled faintly. Palace Master's wife, I've troubled you with this matter. We're all family. Why are you being so polite? Nangong Wu obviously did not care about the formalities as she spoke so familiarly. Looking at Nangong Wu's friendliness, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others revealed a smile on their faces. After spending so much time with Nangong Wu, they already understood Nangong Wu's character. Situ Yan did not find it strange as well. After all, Nangong Wu's character was well known in the world of sections. However, from Situ Yan's point of view, Nangong Wu's character was also genuine. Compared to some hypocrites, Nangong Wu's character was undoubtedly more admirable. I've already made the explosives. Why don't we go to the back and see the effects of the explosives? Nangong Wu's face was filled with excitement. Usually, when she was researching explosives, others would think that she was not doing her job properly. She did not expect that the explosives would have such an effect. She was really happy. When she thought that everyone would want to see the results of her work, she felt a sense of pride. After all, people's hard work should work hard. Following Nangong Wu's words, Situ Yan and the others looked at each other and revealed an interested expression. In fact, to cultivators in the world of cultivation, they always felt that the power of the explosives could not reach a certain level. However, since Palace Master Yu and Nangong Wu were so confident, Situ Yan also wanted to see the power of the explosives. Di Beichen was also curious. The last time he left, he did not gain anything from Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others. Now that they were so happy, they must have gained a lot. Soon, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others arrived at the location where they were testing the power of the explosives. Nangong Wu immediately ignited the explosives and threw them into the formation. Chapter 2003. Everyone's eyes fell on the explosive. They were really curious about the power of this explosive. Bang! A loud explosion rang out. Smoke and dust filled the sky, and the whole ground shook from the explosion. The yellow sand in front of them blocked their line of sight. However, with the protection of the array, the power did not spread out. Because Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others were very close to the location of the array, they could still clearly feel all of this. When Situ Yan and Di Beichen noticed the movement, their eyes could not help but be filled with amazement. They did not expect the power of this explosive to be so powerful. It was far beyond their imagination. If a few of such powerful explosives were thrown in the Yu clan would definitely be in a panic. After seeing the power of this explosive, Nangong Wu could not help but smile. Her clear eyes were filled with pride. This was her proudest explosive ever since she started developing explosives. This level of power was much stronger than the one she had made in the past. Usually, Yu Linfeng was non-committal when it came to her making explosives. Although he had specially made an explosives workshop for her, from Yu Linfeng's attitude, it could be seen that he did not want her to waste too much time in this area. However, after she made such a powerful explosive last time, Yu Linfeng's attitude changed. This was what made her the happiest. Palace Mistress is really amazing. You can actually make such an explosive. This old man has never seen it before. C2 Yin praised without hesitation. This kind of power was really eye-opening. Di Beichen's eyes were also filled with joy. With this explosive, their problem would be solved. The power of this kind of explosive is really eye-opening. Di Beichen also exclaimed in admiration. Listening to everyone's praise, the smile on Nangong Wu's face became more and more brilliant. She had never heard anyone praise her in the field of explosives. Today, she was really happy. As long as I can help Hong Zhuang, I am the happiest. Nangong Wu said with a smile. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Bailey Hong Zhuang bowed to Nangong Wu, her eyes full of sincerity and gratitude. In a short period of time, Situ Yin and Yu Linfeng quickly became familiar with each other. This was because they all had the same person they wanted to treat well. This person was Bailey Hong Zhuang. Just this little bit of connection was enough. During lunch, Situ Yin and the others had been discussing how to carry out the rescue plan. In the end, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun decided to let them meet up with the people from Shitian Pavilion. Although Situ Yin was powerful, his whereabouts had always been noticed by many people. Therefore, they decided to have Situ Yin wait at a place not far from them. If there was a problem, it would not be too late for Situ Yin to take action. If there were no problems, they would be able to solve everything on their own. Nangong Wu and Yu Linfeng originally planned to go, but in the end, Situ Yin dissuaded them. The Yu clan was a very sensitive clan. If many people suddenly rushed into the city, they would definitely notice. Therefore, the fewer people they sent, the better. Chapter 2004. The next day, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun left the Limitless Palace and headed towards the Yu clan. The Yu clan was very far from the Limitless Palace. Therefore, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun spent a lot of time on the journey. Whether it was Bailey Hong Zhuang or Di Beichun, both of them wanted to reach the Yu clan as soon as possible. They only wanted to save Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing as soon as possible. The closer they got to Yutian City, the more excited Bailey Hong Zhuang became. Until now, she still didn't know what her parents looked like. Back then, they had been separated for more than 10 years. From Bailey Hong Zhuang's point of view, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had done so much for her. She only hoped that she would be able to repay them in the future. Half a month later, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun looked at the 3 big words written on the city gate in front of them. Their eyes were filled with a complicated light. Yutian City, this was a city within the Yu clan's territory. There were many people with the surname Yu in it. These people were usually from the Yu clan side branches. After a long time, this city was formed. Therefore, whenever outsiders came here, they would always attract a lot of attention. However, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others weren't stupid people. The Shitian Pavilion had been gathering information for many years, so they were very experienced in dealing with this kind of matter. Long ago, they had come to Yutian City under the pretext of seeking treatment from the Yu clan. With the Shitian Pavilion's ability, they could naturally find people with strange illnesses. After the Yu clan saw the person with the illness, they quoted an extremely high price. It was no different from a lion opening its mouth. The Shitian Pavilion's people pretended that they couldn't take out enough money, so they had been waiting in Yutian City. As for Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun, they were the family members who came to give the money. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had disguised themselves as ordinary people. In order to not be discovered, Di Beichun even deliberately hid his aura. He no longer had the intimidating aura from before. This time, their success or failure in coming to Yutian City depended on this. Therefore, they had to make sure that no one noticed them. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the city in front of her with a complicated and cold gaze. It was only a fleeting moment. No one noticed it. At that time, her parents had also carried her here to seek help from the Yu clan. In the end, they were chased by the Yu clan. In the end, he panicked and left her in Phonbo country. Then, she was taken away. Therefore, to her, this city was her enemy's city. A city. Yutian City, and silently. He was silently, comforted her. Silently. He knew how much Bailey Hongzhuang hated the Yu clan, but now was not the time to make a move. Feeling Di Beichun's comfort, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, her expression returning to normal. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the city together. Mo Yunjue had already told them the location of the inn. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun found it after searching for a while. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the inn, many gazes fell on them. However, these gazes were extremely obscure. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang's amazing intuition, ordinary people wouldn't be able to sense it. Chapter 2005. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun knocked on the door, there was a moment of silence in the room. Di Beichun then said, "Young master, we have already brought the money." As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's voices fell, there was a sound of footsteps in the room. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that the gazes on her had quietly disappeared. Obviously, these were the gazes of the people of Shitian Tower. Just from the performance of these people, Bailey Hongzhuang could see the seriousness and power of Shitian Tower. When the door opened, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun saw a completely unfamiliar face. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun did not find it strange. The two of them also came in disguise. If Mo Yunjue appeared here, then he must also be in disguise. Almost at the moment when they met, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had already determined that the ordinary man in front of them was Mo Yunjue. When Mo Yunjue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, and then he smiled. "Come in." After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the room, the three of them looked at each other and smiled. "I didn't expect your disguise to be so good. If I didn't know the situation, ordinary people wouldn't recognize you at all." Mo Yunjue had been in Jianghu for many years and had seen many things. Disguise was an important means of Shitian Tower. Among many forces, Shitian Tower's disguise could be said to be the best. However, when he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun in front of him, he felt that their disguising skills were even better than his. How could he not be surprised? Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun smiled. Hongzhuang's disguise skills have always been outstanding. Di Beichun smiled faintly. In the past, he and Mo Yunjue did not have much contact. Speaking of which, they were love rivals. From the few times he had seen Mo Yunjue, he could tell that Mo Yunjue was someone who would not pass on his responsibilities. Since he was able to become the pavilion master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, he was naturally decisive in killing. This time, Mo Yunjue had helped him and Hongzhuang so much. He was really grateful to Mo Yunjue. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue's eyes could not help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang. "Your disguise looks very natural and very obedient. It is more difficult to detect than the disguise that everyone uses." Mo Yunjue originally had a certain understanding of disguise, so at this moment, he already knew the difference between the two with a simple look. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. "If there's a chance, I will teach you this disguise." Mo Yunjue had spent so much effort to help her find her parents this time. Her heart was full of gratitude. Whether it was words or material things, they could not express her gratitude. If the disguise could be of some help to Mo Yunjue, she would not be stingy. As an assassin organization, the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion usually had a lot of shady situations. At this time, if she could master a good disguise, it would be of great help to them. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Imo Yunjue's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he said with a smile, "Then I will thank you in advance. You are too polite. I haven't thanked you for helping me find the whereabouts of my parents." Chapter 2006. Imo Yunjue waved his hand and looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had disguised herself as an ordinary person, her ink-black phoenix eyes were still shining brightly. It had been some time since the end of the competition. Although he knew that he had no hope, he still couldn't stop himself from thinking about Bailey Hongzhuang. After finding out that Lan Yanxiao and Mu Lingbing were Bailey Hongzhuang's parents, he personally came to investigate. In order to obtain this accurate information, their Shutian Tower had paid a considerable price. I've said before that as long as it's something you need, I'll definitely help. There's no need to be polite, Imo Yunjue said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head in astonishment, only to see the deep affection and determination in Imo Yunjue's eyes. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what to say. During the competition, she had already explained it to Imo Yunjue. However, she also knew that it wasn't easy to forget someone. Originally, she had hoped that Imo Yunjue would have a good life in the future. She shouldn't have bothered Imo Yunjue. However, there was nothing she could do about the situation this time. Di Baichen naturally didn't miss Imo Yunjue's expression and sighed in his heart. However, he had always stood by Bailey Hongzhuang's side and used his actions to declare his sovereignty. A long time ago, he had already heard that the Shutian Tower's young tower master was decisive and resolute. He was a powerful person. Now that he had come into contact with Imo Yunjue, he increasingly felt that Imo Yunjue wasn't a simple person. This kind of person was truly a formidable opponent. Fortunately, he had met Hongzhuang earlier than Imo Yunjue. Otherwise, this competition wouldn't have been easy. Imo Yunjue naturally knew his limits and immediately said, "Since you're already here, let's talk about the current situation and how to deal with it." Following Imo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's faces were filled with seriousness. "We've already confirmed that your parents are imprisoned under Yu Siqing's residence." Imo Yunjue's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, a complicated light flickering in the depths of his eyes. However, according to our understanding, Yu Siqing is a very ruthless person. Moreover, her medical skills are very brilliant. I think that Uncle and Annie haven't had a good time after being imprisoned by Yu Siqing. Imo Yunjue had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's identity would be like this. So much so, he couldn't bear to tell Bailey Hongzhuang. If Hongzhuang heard this news, she would definitely be very sad. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed Imo Yunjue's unbearable gaze. She couldn't help but frown and ask, "What do you mean by not having a good time?" She had already expected that her parents wouldn't have had a good time after all these years. With Yu Siqing's abnormal level, she would probably torture her parents whenever she thought of what happened back then. However, judging from Imo Yunjue's attitude, it seemed that the situation was worse than she had imagined. Yu Siqing's medical skills are very exquisite. Moreover, I've never seen her test the effects of her medicine on humans or animals. Chapter 2007. Imo Yunjue pondered for a moment before deciding to tell Bailey Hongzhuang about this. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't understand all this now, then when they went in to save people, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely be shocked by the scene. Under such circumstances, it was a race against time. There was no time to be shocked or delayed. Following Imo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned ugly. She had also thought of this situation, but she had been anticipating it. She had been overthinking it. Unfortunately, since Imo Yunjue had said so, then this matter was set in stone, to be used as a lab rat for experiments. This was an extremely miserable treatment. As a doctor, Bailey Hongzhuang understood the situation better than anyone else. She would never use humans as test subjects. At most, she would try it on some animals. If Yu Siqing had used her parents as test subjects all these years, then the pain they had suffered must be even more terrifying than she had imagined. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but clench her hands into fists. Her veins bulged and her eyes filled with anger. She would definitely return all of this to Yu Siqing. Even if she made a move against the Yu family, she wouldn't immediately kill Yu Siqing. She would bring her back and let her experience the torture her parents had suffered all these years. Mo Yunjue looked at the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, and his eyes could not help but be filled with worry. Hongzhuang. Under such circumstances, he knew very well that no matter what kind of words he used to comfort her, they would all pale in comparison. Di Beichen also held Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. Actually, they all knew that Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao hadn't had a good time these years. They were probably at their last breaths under Yu Siqing's torture. However, when the truth was presented before them, they found it hard to accept. Noticing Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue's worried gazes, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly recovered from her emotions. She waved her hand, and her expression returned to normal, but her eyes were still fierce. "Don't worry, I'm fine," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Although Bailey Hongzhuang said so, Mo Yunjue and Di Beichen's worries didn't dissipate. Right now, Hongzhuang was probably just pretending to be calm. No one could accept this. In reality, they still couldn't imagine what it would be like when they saw Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. At the same time, they hated Yu Siqing to the extreme. That woman was simply a pervert. If it wasn't for her, Hongzhuang wouldn't have endured all these years of suffering. For the two men, Bailey Hongzhuang was the most important woman in their hearts. Since Yu Siqing dared to hurt Bailey Hongzhuang, they wouldn't let her off from the bottom of their hearts. Continue. What's the situation now? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. No matter how serious her parents' injuries were, she would do her best to treat them after she rescued them. Yu Siqing usually stays in her residence and has no intention of leaving. Chapter 2008. Furthermore, she only left to get some medicinal ingredients. It's only been a short while, so it won't be easy for us to save them. At the very least, we have to think of a way to make Yu Siqing leave. Yu Siqing has a very high position in the Yu clan. As long as she gives the order, the entire Yu clan will move. No matter if it's the Yu clan or Yu Tian City, it won't be easy for us to escape once we're discovered. After all, even with Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's strength, they couldn't escape the Yu clan's pursuit. Mo Yunjue's gaze was serious. The Yu clan's strength was indeed not to be underestimated. Furthermore, this was the Yu clan's territory, so it would be even harder for them to move. They didn't have many people with them to fight head-on. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, the actual situation was the same as what Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had predicted. We also have some understanding of the situation. Di Beichen slowly said, "We've already thought of a way to deal with this." Hearing this, Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows and looked at Di Beichen in astonishment. He didn't expect that Di Beichen and the rest had already thought of a way. "We're preparing to throw a few explosives at the Yu clan to attract Yu Siqing's attention. As long as she leaves, we'll take the opportunity to sneak in and quickly rescue them. After that, we'll leave Yu Tian City without hesitation." Explosives? Mo Yunjue frowned. In his opinion, finding a way to attract Yu Siqing's attention was also the best way. However, what method was this? He had thought for a long time, but he couldn't think of a suitable method. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to attract Yu Siqing's attention. Moreover, the explosives weren't very powerful. Logically speaking, Yu Siqing wouldn't care about such a small matter. "We've made extremely powerful explosives, so we don't have to worry about this," Di Beichen explained concisely. Mo Yunjue was also a smart person. Since Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were so confident, then there should be no problem with the explosives. Since you are so confident in the power of the explosives, then this method is indeed feasible, Mo Yunjue said with certainty. After this, I'll take the money and go to the Yu clan to seek treatment. If possible, we'll ask Yu Siqing for help. While we're there, you can also use explosives. Be prepared. In this way, the Yu clan will be busy everywhere, and Yu Siqing will definitely choose to leave the house. Mo Yunjue thought for a moment and quickly came up with a rescue plan. Di Beichan, go and rescue Hong Zhuang's parents. If you need any help, my men can help you. If you need to bring a few people, you can also choose from my subordinates. They're all trustworthy people. Bailey Hong Zhuang shook her head slightly. As for the rescue, Di Beichan and I will do it. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang worriedly. I know that you want to rescue them personally, but the process is full of danger. If Di Beichan goes, he will have more confidence. Mo Yunjue's expression was serious. This wasn't the time to act on impulse. If he was careless, he would lose everything. Di Beichan was very strong. Even if he was discovered, the chances of him escaping would be much higher. Chapter 2009. However, if Bailey Hong Zhuang were to fall into the Yu clan's hands, the situation would not be so simple. Yu Siqing hated Bailey Hong Zhuang and her family so much. If she saw Bailey Hong Zhuang, she would definitely recognize her. At that time, Hong Zhuang would be in danger. With Di Beichan's status, the Yu clan would think carefully about how to deal with him. However, as long as they did not attack Di Beichan, it would not matter if they attacked Bailey Hong Zhuang. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hong Zhuang knew that Mo Yunjue was worried about her and understood the meaning behind Mo Yunjue's words. However, Bailey Hong Zhuang still smiled and shook her head. I've already made up my mind. Furthermore, I am confident that I will be able to come out safely. If she did not have the Chaos Ring, it would be dangerous for her to rescue them. However, the situation was not that bad now. This time, she had already made sufficient preparations for coming to Yutian City. She believed that she would definitely be able to rescue her parents. Looking at Bailey Hong Zhuang's determined expression, Mo Yunjue frowned slightly. He had been in Yutian City for so long and had a better understanding of the Yu clan. The Yu clan was really a dangerous existence. Although he could feel that Hong Zhuang's strength had increased by quite a bit compared to the time when she came out from the assessment, this level of strength was still not enough for the Yu clan. There were many experts in the Yu clan. Although they had created chaos, the Yu clan's reaction speed was still extremely fast. Thinking about this, Mo Yunjue could not help but look at Di Beichan. In this situation, it was not suitable for him to say too much. He believed that Di Beichan would not agree to it either. However, Di Beichan's answer surprised Mo Yunjue. Since Hong Zhuang has already decided, then let's go together. I will take good care of her. Di Beichan took a deep look at Bailey Hong Zhuang. Hong Zhuang had already told him how to save her. He felt that the chances of success were very high. If there really was danger, Hong Zhuang could enter the Chaos Ring with Uncle and Annie, and he could bring them away. As Di Beichan's words fell, Mo Yunjue's frown deepened. He looked at Di Beichan with dissatisfaction. You're actually going along with Hong Zhuang's nonsense? We've already discussed the countermeasures before, so don't worry. Di Beichan smiled. Mo Yunjue's gaze swept between Di Beichan and Bailey Hong Zhuang. Although he had some doubts in his heart, he could feel Di Beichan's confidence when he said this. Although they were rivals in love, Mo Yunjue also admitted that Di Beichan was very strong. Di Beichan's concern for Hong Zhuang was no less than his. If Di Beichan did not have the confidence to let Hong Zhuang leave safely, he would not have said such words. After thinking for a moment, Mo Yunjue said, Since you have already planned this, then I won't say more. Be careful. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichan nodded. We will. Then, when do you plan to take action? Mo Yunjue asked. Di Beichan and Bailey Hong Zhuang looked at each other and said, The sooner the better. As long as you have made sufficient preparations, we can take action at any time. Mo Yunjue spoke without hesitation. No matter what he did, he was always swift and decisive. Moreover, in such a situation, Hong Zhuang's parents would have to suffer more if they were to delay any further. Mo Yunjue, who was originally very worried, understood after hearing the second half of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. The Tian sect leader had personally come to Yutian City. No wonder Di Beiqin and Bailey Hongzhuang were so confident. Chapter 2011. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two discussed how to deal with the situation, they quietly waited for the sky to darken. After all, the sky was too bright. No matter what they did, it would be inconvenient. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beiqin then returned to the house. After Mo Yunjue left, they began to move. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beiqin were preparing to rest in the house, suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the street. Lan family's eldest miss is here. So this is Lan family's eldest miss, Lan Qingyan. They had long heard of her name. Seeing her today, she was indeed extraordinary. Lan family's eldest miss is famous for being favored by the heavens. Sometimes, she would come with her mother to the Yu family to take a look. Lan Qingyan. Hearing this name, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly changed. Regarding this sister, who had stolen everything from her, she had never seen her with her own eyes. Originally, she thought that there was still some time before they would meet. She didn't expect that they would have the opportunity to meet each other today. Bailey Hongzhuang opened the window and saw that the street was crowded with people. Everyone was either curious or envious as they looked at the oncoming carriage. This carriage was covered by a white veil on all sides. It was hazy. Looking carefully, one could still clearly see Lan Qingyan's appearance. Lan Qingyan was wearing a white dress. Her appearance was outstanding. Her eyes were upturned, revealing disdain and contempt towards the gazes of the crowd. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Lan Qingyan also liked to wear a white dress, she couldn't help but frown. She didn't think that Lan Qingyan's preferences were so similar to hers. No wonder she had stolen everything from her. It seemed that they were destined to be enemies from the moment they were born. Seeing the disdain and arrogance on Lan Qingyan's face, Bailey Hongzhuang recalled her decade-long life in the general's residence. Originally, all the glory belonged to their family. However, it was destroyed by Lan Qingyan's family. It was obviously stolen, but they took it for granted. Her parents were still suffering in the Yu clan, while Lan Qingyan's family was enjoying the splendor and wealth. A strong hatred burned in Bailey Hongzhuang's chest. Her body seemed to become scorching hot in an instant, and a burning pain spread all over her body. Lan Qingyan's family had caused them to sink into a tragedy for more than 10 years, and she would make Lan Qingyan sink into hell for the next few years. She, Bailey Hongzhuang, was a woman of her words. Lan Qingyan sat loftily on top of the carriage, wearing luxurious clothes. Her every movement was filled with arrogance and contempt. Every time she went out, these people would show such an expression. She was already used to it. These ordinary people were a joke at her eyes. From the moment she was born, she was nobler than these people and received everyone's attention. However, at this moment, Lan Qingyan felt an extremely sharp light. Even she felt a chill in her heart when she felt this gaze. She felt uncomfortable from the bottom of her heart. She couldn't help but look around, but found that this gaze had already disappeared, making her unable to investigate. Lan Qingyan couldn't help but frown. In Yutian City, there was actually someone who dared to look at her with such a gaze. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that her gaze towards Lan Qingyan was filled with murderous intent, so she quickly retracted her gaze. Chapter 2012. Behind Lan Qingyan's carriage was a woman dressed in a peony-colored robe. Although it was Bailey Hongzhuang's first time seeing her, she knew that this was Lan Qingyan's mother, Yuman Lan. She was the instigator of this matter. If it wasn't for Yu Manlan's selfishness, how could they have fallen to such a state? Speaking of which, the instigators of this matter were Yu Siqing and Yu Manlan. These two women from the Yu clan had the hearts of snakes and scorpions. It wouldn't be long before she would tear apart their pretense of elegance and nobility, revealing their true faces in front of everyone. Yu Manlan was originally in a good mood, so she took the time to return to her maternal home to take a look. However, just as she was feeling happy, she suddenly felt a chill down her spine. When she wanted to see where the problem came from, it had already disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Yu Manlan thought for a moment, then shook her head. This was Yutian City. It was impossible for such a situation to occur. She must have been hallucinating. Yu Manlan shook her head and ignored that feeling. With her current noble status, who would dare to harm her? Unless they didn't want to live anymore. After Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan's carriage disappeared from her sight, Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her gaze. Di Beichen's hand had already quietly rested on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. He also didn't expect to meet Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan here today. Hongzhuang saw these two enemies for the first time, so the impact on her heart must be great. Wife, you will soon take back everything that belongs to you. Di Beichen's voice was firm and unquestionable. Things that were taken from others didn't belong to them. The glory that Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan were enjoying now would eventually be overturned by their hands. His beloved wife was almost ruined by these despicable and shameless people. Even if it was him, he would not allow them to continue living freely like this. I was just thinking, every time father and mother knew that Lan Jingquang's family was living such a glorious life, how much pain did they feel in their hearts? Bailey Hongzhuang gritted her teeth, and every word seemed to be squeezed out from between her teeth. She was almost certain that every time Yu Manlan and the others returned to the Yu clan, Yu Siqing would definitely tell her parents the news. The enemy who had caused him to be in such a miserable state had been living such a carefree life all these years. When father and mother heard this news, their hearts must have been bleeding. The feeling of wanting to destroy everything was spreading, but he couldn't do anything about it. Just the pain of blood and tears was not something that an ordinary person could understand. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Di Beichen's body shook. Bailey Hongzhuang's words gave him a great shock. Just thinking about this kind of pain was unbearable for him, let alone Lan Yinshao and his wife. Wife, all of this suffering will end. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was ice-cold without a trace of warmth, just like her pale face that was filled with pain. I'm fine. Bailey Hongzhuang gritted her teeth. She knew that all of this pain was meaningless. She wanted to solve all of this herself and return all of this pain to these dirty and shameless people 1,000 times over. Chapter 2013. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang was not the only one who was in pain. When Tian saw Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan, his eyes were also filled with anger. It was these people who had ruined his daughter and granddaughter's lives. He suppressed the urge to make a move. He really wanted to strangle the two of them to death. However, if he made a move now, Mu Lingbing would not be able to see and he would not be able to vent his anger. Therefore, he would let the two of them live for a while longer. However, this comfortable life would not last long. Di Beichen poured a cup of tea for Bailey Hongzhuang to let Bailey Hongzhuang regain her composure. They still had to make a move later. Hongzhuang could not afford to lose her composure now. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Di Beichen opened the door and saw Mo Yunjue standing outside. Mo Yunjue did not have time to greet Di Beichen. His gaze was already fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. He did not expect Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan to come to the Yu clan today. When he saw Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan's carriage, he knew that something was wrong. He was also clear about the enmity between the two of them and Hongzhuang. At this moment, Hongzhuang must have seen them as enemies. However, this was not the time to have a conflict with Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan. He knew that Hong Zhuang would definitely suppress the displeasure in her heart. However, the impact of the scene on her would not be small. After all, she came to Yutian City to rescue her parents. However, she met her enemies here. Comparing the two, one could imagine the pain and hatred in her heart. Faced with such a background, even he could not help but feel sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, when Mo Yunjue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, although Bailey Hongzhuang's face was slightly pale, she did not lose her composure. Di Bei-chen knew the purpose of Mo Yunjue coming to the house at this moment. He must be worried about Hongzhuang. He immediately stepped aside and allowed Mo Yunjue to enter the room. Mo Yunjue nodded at Di Bei-chen and slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. "Hongzhuang, are you all right?" Mo Yunjue asked. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Mo Yunjue, and the corners of her mouth curled into a smile. However, this smile did not reach her eyes. "I'm fine. I've known about this for a long time. Although today is the first time I've seen them, I'll have many opportunities to meet them in the future. Don't worry about me." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. This time, there was no conflict between them. However, the next time they met, everything would not be so simple. After Mo Yunjue felt the intense hatred in Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he also understood that no matter who it was with such a background, when facing their enemies, they would definitely be filled with hatred. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang. If it was him, he would definitely make Lan Xinyan's family live a life worse than death. After Hongzhuang, Lan Xinyan, and the others arrive, I'm afraid that there will be some changes in the situation. I'll ask my subordinates to find out about their situation after they entered the Yu clan. After that, we'll decide whether to take action tonight. How about it? Mo Yunjue slowly said. If Lan Xinyan and the others did not appear, there would not be any problems taking action tonight. However, since there was a variable, then any changes were possible. They had to be prepared. Chapter 2014. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally knew that this sudden turn of events would affect their following actions, so she nodded. All right. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue walked out of the room and instructed his subordinates to keep an eye on Lan Xinyan and Yu Manlin's movements after they entered the Yu residence. After Mo Yunjue left, Bailey Hongzhuang clenched her fists again, her gaze sinister and ruthless. Di Bei-chen saw the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, and his deep and charming eyes were filled with concern. "Wife, what's wrong? My parents have been imprisoned by Yu Siqing for so many years. Others may not know, but Yu Manlan and the others must know." Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Bei-chen's expression changed slightly. He had also considered this point. Back then, this matter was done by Yu Siqing and Yu Manlan. Lan Jingquang also knew about this. All these years, Lan Jingquang and his family would occasionally come to the Yu residence to show off in front of her parents. Back in the Lan residence, Lan Jingquang had been suppressed by Lan Yunxiao in every aspect, but he had been forced to turn things around. Since Lan Jingquang was able to do such a thing back then, his mentality was naturally extremely twisted. I'm afraid that Yu Manlan and Lan Xinyan will definitely go to Yu Siqing's basement after going to the Yu residence. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a cold light. She originally thought that after saving her parents today, her parents' suffering would end here. She never thought that Yu Manlan and Lan Xinyan would suddenly appear. Her parents would probably have to endure another round of humiliation. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an indescribable pain in her heart. Di Bei-chen was also speechless towards Bailey Hongzhuang's words. In fact, he had the same thought in his mind. Lan Yunxiao and his wife had already suffered enough these years. He never thought that they would have to endure another round of suffering today. None of them thought that there would be a new problem and another unforeseen event while saving them today. "Wife, we will definitely rescue Uncle and Annie tonight. Don't worry too much." At a time like this, all words seemed to pale in comparison. However, even if the situation had changed due to Lan Xinyan's appearance, they would still rescue them tonight. As for the matter of revenge, they would be ready very soon. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes and fell into silence. Although he was furious, there was nothing he could do about it. She could only wait for Mo Yunjue's men to return and tell her the details of the situation. She only hoped that this matter would not change too much because of the arrival of Lan Qingyin and Yi Qingyu. If their parents had to suffer another round of humiliation, then they would remember this taste and return it 1,000 times in the future. After Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan arrived at the Yu clan, they were welcomed by the Yu clan. Lan Qingyin's reputation among the younger generation of cultivators was extremely resounding. Her position in the Lan family was also incomparable. Just the Rainbow Divine Pearl's special power was not something that ordinary people could compare to. Although Lan Qingyin was a member of the Lan family, she also had half of the Yu clan's bloodline. Therefore, the Yu clan was equally proud of her. Lan Qingyin looked at the Yu clan's welcoming manner and felt a burst of pride in her heart. With her talent and strength, there were not many people in the younger generation who could compare to her. Chapter 2015. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun quietly waited for news in the room. The two of them didn't make any unnecessary movements and just sat quietly at the side. However, the anxiety in their hearts couldn't be concealed. Now, every minute and every second was a kind of torture to them. They could only wait here. After an hour, Mo Yunjue finally appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's line of sight. However, Mo Yunjue's expression was obviously not good. Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyin went to find Yu Siqing not long after arriving at the Yu clan. Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Manlan and Yu Siqing had a very deep relationship. However, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing were imprisoned below Yu Siqing. As for whether they were talking to Yu Siqing or had gone to the dungeon, they couldn't tell from outside. However, under such circumstances, the latter was obviously more likely. The teacup in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand instantly turned into powder after hearing Mo Yunjue's words. Although she had already guessed this possibility, when it really happened, she couldn't help but feel even worse. I've already sent people to keep an eye on them and see when they come out of the room. Mo Yunjue spoke. Hongzhuang, you don't have to worry too much. Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan's appearance didn't cause too much of a change. On the contrary, they might have helped us. Hearing this, Di Beichun couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue and ask, what do you mean? Lan Qingyin's status in the Lan clan is very high. The Yu clan also values Lan Qingyin very much. Therefore, the Yu clan is already preparing a banquet. Tonight, the Yu clan's members will all have a banquet together. In this way, Yu Siqing will definitely leave the room, and it will be more convenient for us to take action. As he spoke, Mo Yunjue observed the changes in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. In this situation, he was unable to comfort Bailey Hongzhuang. He could only hope that this news would comfort Bailey Hongzhuang a little. Master, are you all right? Xiaohei looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan appeared, Master's mood had not been right. They were really worried. Xiaobai and Baishir also looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although they knew that their master was in a terrible mood, they were still worried about her. Looking at the worried looks of the three beasties, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. It's nothing. I was just thinking about how to give Yu Siqing and the rest a surprise. Yu Siqing, Yu Manlan, Lan Qingyin. These three women were undoubtedly the three women she hated the most. Although her goal today was to save her parents, and she couldn't waste any more time here, she still had to think of a way to return something to them. Otherwise, this would not be in line with her personality. The three beasties, who were originally worried, were relieved after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words. This was their master's true nature. Since things had come to this, they had to get something back. They couldn't let the other party continue to be so arrogant. Di Beichun and Mo Yunjue heaved a sigh of relief after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. At least, They didn't need to be so worried anymore. Chapter 2016. After all, the Yu clan had gone overboard with Hongzhuang. If they didn't collect some interest, they wouldn't be happy about it. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on Mo Yunjue and said, Yunju, do you have a detailed map of the Yu clan? Since she was here, she had to leave something behind. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in line with her character. Although she couldn't deal with the Yu clan now, it wouldn't be a problem for her to do other things. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Yunjue's eyes were filled with doubt. He didn't know what Hongzhuang was planning to do. However, no matter what Hongzhuang chose to do, he would support her. Yes, Mo Yunjue nodded. Previously, when they were searching for the location where Lan Yinshao and his wife were being held, they had spent a lot of effort. They were very familiar with every place in the Yu clan. Therefore, they naturally had a detailed map of the distribution of the Yu clan. Bailey Hongzhuang took the map from Mo Yunjue's hands, and her eyes immediately brightened. Beichen, you and Yunju go to the next room first. I need to prepare some things. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Steve Beichen and Mo Yunjue looked at each other and nodded. To them, as long as Hongzhuang's mood could improve, then no matter what Hongzhuang did, it would be good. After Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue left together, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly took out the materials from the primordial chaos ring. The three beasties looked curiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. Every time Master wanted to prank someone, she would use some unexpected method. They didn't know what Master was planning to do this time. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai in front of her and said, I'll have to trouble you today. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai did not feel tired at all. Instead, they looked very excited. Master, what do you want us to do? As long as we can do it, there will be no problem. Xiao He's eyes lit up. It already hated the Yu clan to the core. Now that it had the chance to take revenge on them, it was the happiest thing in the world. White Lion was a little disappointed. At a time like this, he wanted to do something for his master. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Baisher's head. She knew how Baisher felt. However, given the situation today, it was not convenient for White Lion to take action. The Yu clan was heavily guarded. White Lion's body was getting bigger and bigger. It was too eye-catching. If they were captured by the Yu clan, that would be really bad. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were different. They could change their sizes at will, and it was almost impossible for them to be discovered. Master, do you want us to bring explosives to the Yu clan's most important place? Xiao Bai looked excitedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. For it, who wanted to see the world in chaos, it was also full of evil ideas. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This is indeed one of the plans. Hearing this, White Lion asked curiously, There's a second plan? Of course. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a ruthless light. The Yu clan was the first to be unkind to them. Then, they shouldn't blame her for being unjust. I have to hurry up and make the poison powder. After Bailey Hongzhuang left the sentence, she began to get busy. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.